Snow fell in soft spirals, whispering against the black banners of the crowned stag, as the dawn spread thin light over Winterfell's ramparts. The dead of the long night's siege lay frozen in the drifts. Bolton men, Sellswards, Karstark deserters, each stiff as the weather-shattered flag that still clung to the gatehouse arch. Beneath that arch rode Stannis Baratheon, Lord of Dragonstone, rightful king of the Andals, the Rhoynar and the First Men, his mailed shoulders dusted white, his jaw set like granite. He did not raise his eyes to the grisly tableau of flayed men the bastard of Bolton had left nailed to the walls, though their crusted wounds were a scarlet salute above his entry. Instead he studied the keep itself, measuring stone and smoke, judging what must be rebuilt and who must pay the price of its ruin. Davos Seaworth rode at his king's side, hand-bound cloak swirling. The Onion Knight's gaze lingered on a charred post where a child's toy horse lay half-buried in ice. It called to mind another child and another fire, and the prayer never spoken on his lips grew bitter in the back of his throat. Yet Shireen's sacrifice had not transpired on that black evening south of the Gift. The snows that had trapped the royal host had broken before desperation could root its claws too deeply. Melisandre, crimson-clad and watchful as a carrion crow, now rode at a respectful distance behind the king, her red eyes flicking between the high towers as though she expected the castle's ancient gods to slither forth in protest. The faint warmth that pulsed from the ruby at her throat misted the air before her, blood red in dawn's pale flame. The inner ward was a ruin of trampled snow and broken shields. The giant Wunweg Darwin knelt amid smoldering barns, prizing arrows from the thick folds of his arm. Free folk picked through the corpses for fallen brothers and sisters, while the northern lords who had answered Stannis' call, Arnulf's surviving Castarks, Lady Dustin's grim horsemen, Wyman Manderly's fat but fierce knights, stood in clutches beneath their banners, awaiting the king's word. And word came, crisp as the wind. "Summon the maester," Stannis commanded. "Let him see to the wounded. Ours, theirs makes no matter." His gaze swept the captive Bolton men being herded beneath the weirwood. "But send Roos's leal dogs to the dungeons until I sit in judgment." "My lord," Davos murmured, "many feared you would take vengeance here and now." "The North expects flaying answered with fire." "They expect justice," Stannis answered, dismounting with a grunt. "They shall have it in proper measure. No more, no less." He paused, surveying the courtyards. "Where is Lady Sansa?" "She fled south with Reek and the girl Asha called the Spearwife," Davos replied, scratching at the stubble on his cheek. "But Sir Justin Massey reports their trail arcs back toward White Harbor. If we move swiftly—" "Later." Stannis strode toward the great hall, boot soles clacking on stone. "I will not pursue the girl tonight. And Reek," his mouth twisted, "whatever horrors he has endured, I will not hunt a broken man through the snow while traitors yet linger at my gate." Inside, the hall reeked of smoke and spilt ale. The trestles bore overturned trenchers, the rushes were gummed with half-thawed blood, and the hearth's embers glowed weakly beneath the weight of a collapsed beam. Stannis halted before the dais, where the faded direwolf once leapt across a torn banner. He stared at the sigil with a thoughtful gravity, as though the tattered cloth still breathed. Then he turned to the gathering lords. "Winterfell is won," he said, his voice iron on anvil. "But victory is never the end of a labor, only the beginning of heavier burdens. The Iron Throne remains in usurping hands, the realm bleeds from 100 wounds, and beyond the wall the cold shadows stir anew. Yet the North has shown its loyalty, and for that loyalty I will answer with justice and protection." "Liu." He swept one gauntleted hand toward Manderly, who bowed, double chin wobbling. "Lord Wyman shall guard the trident of the North. His son, Sir Wendell, may have fallen on the Red Wedding's treacherous floor, but the Manderly name yet stands unbent. With winter upon us, White Harbor must be a bastion of bread and salt for every small folk driven from the fields by snow and war. Do so, and I will confirm your new minted titles over any lands reclaimed from traitors." "Down." Manderley's eyes glittered greedily, yet behind the greed lay something softer. You honor House Manderley, your grace. We shall provision every hungry belly we can reach. Stannis turned to Lady Barbary Dustin, stern as frost. The Dreadfort is forfeit, by right of treason. Yet I will not leave the great keep of Viper's Nest. Lady Dustin, your claim through your fallen husband is known. Swear fealty and provide men to hold the eastern marches, and the Dreadfort shall be yours, under the condition that no man, woman, nor child shall ever again be flayed within its walls. Ben Shan. Lady Dustin's dark eyes smoldered. She knelt, but her lips curved like a blade. I have bled too long beneath flayed banners, my king. I swear. One by one he apportioned justice to surviving Karstarks, forgiven so long as they stood by the crown. To Riswell, Tallheart, Serwyn, every house that bent the knee received both obligation and reward. When at last he finished, the hall thrummed with a fragile hope, as if the very timbers dared to breathe easier. Only then did Davos clear his throat. Your Grace, the Night's Watch sends ravens daily. Queen Selise commands the wall in your absence, but food dwindles. Sir Eliezer Thorne rides north with rangers gone half a year. There are reports of giants stirring. Stannis nodded. We march within a fortnight. Winterfell will not fall to neglect. Lord Wyman, leave provisions. Lady Dustin, station a garrison. I will leave Sir Richard Horp as Castellan until the Starks are found or named dead. Mander. A hush settled. The simple word Stark carried weight heavier than mail. At length, Davos spoke softly. If Bran and Rickon live, they will need their home. They shall have it, said the king, under a throne reconciled to law. B. And when the Iron Throne is vacant, I will sit but as steward for the realm. No, Davos, do not gape. A king's duty is to rule his people, not his pride. The crown is a burden. When my task is done, I shall relinquish it to a council chosen by the great lords and commons alike. Merci. That sparked murmurs. Some approving. Needy. Some fearful. A monarch surrendering power was unheard of since the days of Nymeria's voyages. But Stannis had never courted applause. Night descended swift and sharp, the stars coruscating like shards of ice. In the God's Wood, Melisandre knelt beside the heart tree, lips moving in a language born before Valyria's rise. The Red Woman's shadow twisted among snowy boughs, and her breath rose in scarlet puffs beneath the weirwood's cruel face. Across the yard Davos paced restlessly, recalling the shrieks of burning men at storm's end, the blackened leal faces fallen on Blackwater's purple tide. He recalled the whisper of Shireen's laughter when she chased seagulls along Dragonstone's wet sands, and his stomach clenched. She lived still, snug in the Queen's care, but the memory of what might have been haunted him. The crunch of boots on snow drew his gaze. Stannis approached, helm beneath one arm. My Lord Hand, he greeted in low tones. Your Grace, Davos replied, smoothing the fur lining of his cloak. Melisandre prays. She claims the flames reveal new paths. I see only smoke and ash. Stannis looked toward the trodden snowbanks, where the wounded groaned in makeshift tents. I granted the maester leave to treat the bastard of Bolton. I will need him alive to bear witness at trial. Davos considered. Mercy may startle the North. They have had little of it. It is not mercy, the king said. It is order. If we kill him out of hand, legends will sprout, that the Boltons fought bravely and were cut down by southern daggers in the dark. Let him stand before my banner and confess his treason. Let every flayed corpse be tallied beside his name. He sighed, a rare weariness softening his features. Justice must be seen, if it is to be believed. They stood in silence until a raven croaked overhead. Davos ventured. You spoke of relinquishing the crown. Some would call that folly. Some call me fool already, Stannis answered, voice thin. The realm is broken because no king has bound himself to duty. If my victory continues the cycle, another tyrant, another war. What difference victory? A king must build a world that outlives him. War. Davos studied the hard lines of his liege's face and felt a stirring of pride. You might accomplish what Aegon could not, peace born of law, not fear. Stannis snorted. Steel and parchment alike may fail Seaworth. Yet we must try. His gaze drifted to the heart tree, where Melisandre's ruby pulsed like an open wound. The Red Woman tells me the great other gathers strength beyond the wall. If that foe breaks south, crowns and councils will matter little. Davos shuddered, recalling the pale shadows he had glimpsed on the fist of the first man. Then we march. The fortnight passed in furious labor. Snow-clad fields became mustering grounds. Carts laden with hard bread, barrels of dried cod, sacks of beans and oats. Blacksmiths hammered horseshoes through the night, tanners soaked leather in scalding vats. Maester Tybalt, rescued from Bolton captivity, dosed the feverish and set bones with grim efficiency. 3 mornings before the host's departure, a lone rider galloped through the western gate, bearing the direwolf banner tattered but proud. The man dismounted, gray cloak sodden, cheeks hollow, eyes blazing. He knelt. "I am Jon Snow, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch." Davos stepped forward, astonishment flaring, but Stannis motioned silence. "Rise, Lord Commander. I hear the wall's stores are thin." Jon's jaw clenched. Your Grace. Queen Selisa has rationed, but our numbers swell with refugees. Wildlings, free folk, farmers from the Gift, even clansmen from Skagos. We feed them what we can, but winter closes her fist. Then, now, you come seeking bread. And justice, Jon said, pale flame flickering in his dark eyes. News of your victory has reached the wall. Tormund Giantsbane and the free folk you saved wish to bend the knee in truth. Give them the king's peace, and they will stand beside you against the darkness. He drew a rolled parchment. Queen Daenerys Targaryen marches from Meereen. Her dragons darken Slaver's Bay. The Iron Throne hemorrhages armies in the Reach. This is the hour for men to choose. Stannis accepted the parchment without glance. A Targaryen queen, he mused. Dragons against others. Fire and ice. He folded the scroll, tucking it into his sleeve. Your free folk will have bread, and a place in my line when we march. But they must swear fealty. They will, Jon said. They remember kingly mercy. More than that, they remember a man who stood in the shield wall beside them. He lifted his gaze to Stannis, respect tempered by challenge. They will follow a just king. Stannis inclined his head, and something eased in his shoulders, as though the north itself had nodded back. Then let it be done. When the southern host rolled from Winterfell, its banners formed a sea of color against the white. Crowned stag, flayed man inverted and struck through with red paint, Manderly merman, Dustin's red stallion, the black crow of the watch, the twisting oak of house Seaworth newly granted by the king. And among them drifted new standards. Rule dyed with crude blue sigils, crude scrawl of a bear paw or mammoth, marks of the free folks' nascent houses, born to a future none had foreseen. Melisandre rode at the vanguard, her flame-bright hair streaming. To her left thundered the queen's men. Spears tipped with onion lanterns that glowed with captured fire. Behind them marched the king, stern as ever. But in his eyes flickered a purpose, sharpened by victory and tempered by humility. Shireen rode bundled in sable furs before Davos, pointing at the sky whenever a raven swooped low. The child's laughter pealed like bells across the snowy plain, and for the first time in many moons, the Onion Knight did not feel the bite of old grief. The march southward was punishing. Blizzards swept in curtains so thick the world shrank to the breadth of a campfire's glow. Horses starved or froze despite blankets. Men huddled 3 to a cloak. Yet no night passed without patrols scouring for stragglers, and any man found could expect a share of oats and a place near the flames. The law was hard, but it was fair. Desertion met the noose, pillage the sword, but diligence earned warm gloves, and valor the king's praise. Order grew from hardship like pine from cliff. At Queen's Crown they met the first of the wall's refugees. Families in sleighs drawn by scrawny mules, widows carrying babes, wildlings with ragged spears. They gaped at the banners, cheeks hollow with want. Stannis ordered the supply wagons opened. Half a bag of meal for every soul, salt cod for all, and shelter among the camp's fires. That night Davos found the king standing alone, watching children tear at their first crusts of bread in days. "You give freely," he noted. "I give wisely," Stannis replied. "Aye. Who spares rations today buys loyalty tomorrow, and discipline the day after." Dow. In the morning Jon Snow approached the royal tent, leading Tormund Giantsbane and 2 timid spearwives. They knelt in the snow. Tormund's red beard bristled, but his booming voice wavered. "We kneel for the dawn, Lord South King. We kneel for a world where children live to see summer." "Rise," Stannis said. "Swear by the old gods and the new that you will never raid south of the wall save at my command, and I shall grant you lands in perpetuity. Harsh lands perhaps, but yours to till in peace." Tormund spat into his broad palm, then offered it. "Done." Men watched, hearts shifting like slabs of ice. A king making equals of wildlings. Blasphemy to some, but to others a miracle. Word of Winterfell's liberation spread on the wings of raven and rumor. In the Vale, young Lord Robert heard tales of a stag-crowned king dispensing justice in the snow, and demanded war trumpets to greet him. In Riverrun, Brynden Blackfish weighed options over a map, sullied by river water and blood. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister snarled as she read the latest parchment from Qyburn, her clawed hand tightening until wax cracked. The High Sparrow whispered sermons that the gods themselves had raised a scourge in the north to wash away sin. And in Meereen, Daenerys Stormborn studied a letter penned in Davos' terse hand. She traced the words "The king proposes an alliance" with a fingertip, then looked to her dragons wheeling above the pyramid. A smolder of snow seemed to fill her mouth, unfamiliar and cold. Fire met ice, and the world trembled on the cusp of a dawn neither alone could birth. Stannis reached Castle Black amid howling gale. The ancient fort stank of unwashed bodies crammed atop the wall's icy spine. But relief poured from every arrow slit when wagons rumbled through the tunnel. Food, blankets, new forged blades. Hope para. Selisa kissed her husband's ring-cold cheek with reverence. Shireen darted to her mother's side, and for an instant Davos feared the queen would recoil from the child's grayscale scar. Yet Selisa cupped her daughter's chin, eyes bright with unshed tears. The Red Woman watched, unreadable. On the wall's parapet that night, Jon Snow stood with Stannis above a sea of moonlit forest. Beyond the weirwood white sprawl glimmered faint auroras, green and purple veils rippling like banners on a cosmic wind. Ghost padded at Jon's heel, red eyes reflecting starfire. "The enemy stirs," Jon murmured. "Benjen's horn came yesterday, 3 blasts. He fled half a league ahead of shapes that moved like mist." Stannis' breath billowed. "Then the realm's petty quarrels end tonight. Tomorrow I summon a great council, lords north and south, bastards, wildlings, maesters. They will witness the threat and sign a pact." Jon raised an eyebrow. "A council at the edge of the world?" Stannis said. "In the dragon's shadow, under the wall's gaze, where no man may pretend ignorance." He rested a gauntleted hand on the ancient ice. "If we prevail, Southron crowns will hold little fear for them. But I mean to prevail, and then to show the realm what a just throne can yield." The king's eyes traced the stars as though seeking the fiery heart Melisandre promised. Yet his voice when it came was quiet, almost gentle. "Lord Commander, you spoke of a queen across the sea. If she brings dragons, let them burn the corpses we cannot fell. Fire and ice, together." No. Jon watched the horizon blaze with ghostly emerald. "A song for the ages," he whispered. Below, the Night's Watch prepared signal fires. Wildlings sharpened, salvaged iron. Manderly's archers fitted obsidian to new-strung bows, and Queen Selise oversaw cauldrons of pitch. On the ramparts, Melisandre stretched her arms to the sky, chanting in tongues older than the wall. The ruby at her throat flared, and somewhere in the forest, a distant scream broke the night's hush, shrill, inhuman, swallowed swiftly by the wind. The dawn that followed seemed carved of glass, each shard of light brittle and bright. As the first rays spilled over the wall, Stannis gathered his war council in the old mess hall. Jon Davos, Tormund Wyman, Manderly belted into stretched black, even Alice Karstark swathed in white furs, a toothed dagger at her hip. Maps unrolled across a table sticky with generations of grease. Stannis placed a finger upon Hardhome. We evacuate those trapped by the sea. Massey's gallant shall escort Tormund's hunters in the first sortie. Night gathers, and now our watch begins, all of ours. He looked each in the eye. I care not whose blood runs in your veins. If it runs warm, you fight for the living. Approval hummed. Electric. The Onion Knight caught himself smiling despite the grim of it. Plans laid. The armies prepared. Blacksmiths quenched dragon-glass daggers. Bowyers wrapped feathers to obsidian. Giant war horns were hewn from mammoth tusk, their throats laced with gold to strengthen the thrum. Ravens carried letters south calling lords to send men, not for a king, but for life itself. 4 days after the council, the others came. They spilled from the haunted forest in a pall of silence, pale swords drinking moonlight, their dead thralls shambling behind. Blue eyes ignited the gloom. The living ranks stiffened. Some wept, some prayed, all held. Stannis rode the wall's elevator down, 100 knights flanking him, barded horses snorting puffs of steam. The king drew Lightbringer, the sword's glow burning orange through the swirling snow. At his back, Davos unsheathed a plain steel blade. I never asked for glory, the smuggler muttered. But it finds you nonetheless, Stannis said. Then louder, archers. The night exploded in feathers of fire. Flaming arrows arced over the rampart, plummeting into ranks of whites. The dead ignited like candles dipped in oil, toppling to thrash at the snow. Giants charged, hurling boulders that shattered under blue blades. And among the chaos, Melisandre strode, robes billowing, ruby blinding. She spoke a word that tore sound itself, and a column of flame erupted, carving a molten canyon through ice and bone. Stannis pressed the charge. Lightbringer cleaved a White Walker's spear, searing the inhuman flesh with hissing steam. Jon Snow fought beside him, Longclaw's Valyrian riposte, scattering frost crystals. When his sword bit a walker's neck, the creature shattered into drifting shards that tinkled like chimes falling. Through gaps in the melee, Davos glimpsed Shireen atop the gatehouse, clutching a dragon-glass dagger with white knuckles. Selise kept one arm around her daughter, but the child's chin jutted stubbornly. Davos' heart thundered with terror and pride. The battle raged till dawn faded into bruised daylight. Then the horns of Hardhome thundered on the wind, a deep, mournful note. The left flank had broken, the dead surging toward the tunnel mouth. Stannis wheeled his horse, bellowing commands, rallying Karstark pikemen to hold the gap. But the sea of whites rolled inexorable. And then the air shivered. A roar split the sky. Every gaze lifted to behold a streak of black and gold slicing the clouds, the shadow of a dragon. Its furnace breath raked the forest, light blooming as if the sun had fallen earthward. Whites withered to ash. A second shape followed, green wings like jade, jaws spilling wildfire-hot death. And between them, astride silver-white scales, rode a woman with braids like whips and eyes of molten amethyst. Daenerys Targaryen swept the field with dragonfire, scorching dead and tree alike. Her army, unsullied in neat columns, Dothraki screaming across the ice, charged beneath the wings of Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion. The living host erupted in a cheer, ragged and wild. Fire and ice converged. Stannis spurred to meet the Queen's vanguard. He reined in as Drogon's talons struck ground with a quake. Heat washed his face, steam curled from his beard. The dragon's great head dipped, nostrils huffing like bellows. From the scaled ridge denaries leapt to snow, leather slippers sinking. Her cloak whipped crimson. She studied the king a heartbeat, then inclined her head. "Your grace," she said. Stannis returned the nod. "Your grace." Their eyes met, two storms colliding in silence. Then Stannis looked beyond to the battlefield. "Will your dragons stand for mankind?" "They will," Daenerys vowed. "So long as mankind stands with them." Stannis lifted Lightbringer in salute. "Then let us end the long night together." Weeks bled into months. The dead were driven back to the Frostfangs, where dragonfire melted peaks and obsidian spears found ancient hearts. When at last the others shattered like crystal under dawn's first rays, and their darkness dissipated into nothing, a hush fell so profound the wind itself seemed to cease. On a plateau of smoking ice, Stannis and Daenerys signed the Pact of Two Thrones, witnessed by Jon Snow, Davos Seaworth, Tyrion Lannister newly freed from chains, and 100 lords and lowborn chosen by lot. It decreed a council of 9 to rule, 3 chosen by the northern realms, 3 by the south, and 3 by common voice. The Iron Throne would be melted, steel poured into plowshares and nails for new ships. Dragonstone's anvil rang day and night, forging iron not for war but for gates and bridges and windmills to grind the harvest. Stannis retained the crown till the council's first sitting in Oldtown, but he bore it lightly. He rode the realm with Shireen, dispensing judgments in keeps war-torn and weary. He pardoned poachers, pressed coin into widows' palms, and burned the flayed banners of old. He passed laws limiting lordly levies, enshrining a grain tithe to feed small folk through winter. Davos served as his voice, rough and honest, while Jon Snow, named Warden of the North, oversaw the rebuilding of Winterfell for the return of Bran and Rickon, found alive among the reeds of the neck. When spring unfurled timid blossoms in the reach, the council convened. Lords trembled, maesters sputtered, septons warned doom, but the common-born cheered across taverns from White Harbor to Sunspear. For the first time in living memory, a king relinquished absolute power, placing crown and scepter upon a plain oak dais in the starry sept. Stannis addressed the assembly in clear, steady tones. "I was never meant to be the realm's master, only its servant. Now the realm shall master itself." He turned, descending the steps, and Shireen slipped her small hand into his. Later, upon a balcony overlooking Old Town's cobbled maze, Davos found his king staring at the sunset. "You have done it," the smuggler whispered. "After 1,000 years of war." Stannis' smile was thin but real. "The realm is like a ship, Seaworth. On calm seas any man may steer. Storms will come again, but she has fresh timber now, and sails unfurled to fair wind. Let us hope the helmsman chosen can hold her course." In the sky above, 3 dragons soared. One black, one green, one cream and gold, wings catching scarlet sunlight. Their cries echoed over river and field, neither threat nor warning, but a herald of change. Stannis Baratheon watched them go, felt the weight of duty rise from his shoulders like smoke dissipating on a salt wind. He did not know if songs would remember him kindly, but he knew a just king had stood, if only for a season, and in that season planted seeds the spring could not deny. Snow melted on distant battlements, and from the thawed earth green spears of grass pierced upward, silent, steadfast, inevitable. "Ya, ka, yam." Whispers of spring drifted on the tiles of the starry sept, long after Stannis Baratheon surrendered his crown. But the stone beneath Old Town's spires remembered older, harsher seasons. Dawn burned pearl-pale beyond the stained-glass rose, when Davos Seaworth stepped from the sept into dew-fogged streets. Bells chimed matins across the honey warren of scholars' courts and spice merchants' bridges, but the sound felt muted, wrapped in the hush that clung to a kingdom newly unchained. The Onion Knight drew his cloak tighter. Somewhere beyond the alleys, a river of hawkers' cries was reviving, and the smell of small clothes boiling in lye prickled his nose, life asserting itself with stubborn vigor. He turned toward the Cloudwine Gate, boots slapping puddles, for Maester Samwell Tarly had begged a meeting near the Citadel's granaries, promising intelligence too delicate for parchment. Davos trusted Sam's earnest eyes as he trusted few others. Yet since the Pact of Two Thrones, every scrap of news arrived hemmed in doubt. Lords who had sworn oaths one morning might rail the next, that no smallfolk council would strip them of God-granted birthright. Tyrion Lannister joked over Arbor Gold that the kingdom resembled a board of Savas, where every piece fancied itself king. Steel rings echoed behind Davos. Two silent sisters in gray veils hurried past with a shrouded body on a litter, another casualty of the night's unrest. Rumors claimed someone had knelt beneath the Hightower's beacon, crying visions of demons hatched in dragonfire, then slit his own throat. Men were not fashioned to shift their worlds so swiftly. Davos quickened his pace. He found Samwell waiting beneath a bent copper lantern where gulls shrieked at the fish stink. The young maester's cheeks flushed when he spotted Davos. Sam had grown leaner since the wall, but nerves still gnawed him. He pressed a scroll into Davos's glove. "Intercepted by the Ravenry," he whispered. Ink barely dry. They crowded into an alcove between grain silos. Davos broke the seal, a purple kraken, and scanned the cramped script. His stomach knotted. Euron Greyjoy, styling himself Stormgod's herald, had sailed from the smoking sea with 100 hulls sheeted in black sailcloth. Pike and Great White were aflame, slain under a banner depicting a bleeding eye. Yet the letter was not threat, it was invitation. "A king has fallen," Euron wrote. "So the world requires gods. Let the pretenders bicker over councils. I will teach them worship." He promised to make landfall on the Mander within a moon's turn, dragging with him 5 warlocks of Quarth, and a treasure wrested from Valyria's boiling shadow. A horn wrought from the spine of a kraken, banded in red gold, said to wake storms and bend dragons. Sam's voice shook. "If he reaches Old Town." "The realm is tinder," Davos finished. "One spark, and the peace burns." They hurried toward the harbor watch, boots slipping on slime-slick cobbles. Already gulls wheeled above quays crammed with timber, the council's first fleet, half-built, half-promise. Dockers hammered at keels and cursed splintered masts. Yet no sails yet flew to challenge Euron's black wings. The council, drunk on parchment precedents, had underestimated the old rhythms of pillage and iron. A horn blast cut the air, not Euron's sorcery, but a city alarm. Davos glimpsed smoke climbing beyond the east walls, oily tendrils twisting among rooftops. "Sam, to the Citadel," he barked. "Warn Archmaester Valen. Quarantine the ravens. If Euron's writings hold spells, we must not send them untested." Nenda Rawal. Sam fled into the throng while Davos shoved through fishmongers, past a septon whose censers shed sparks in panic. Rumor galloped faster than any horse. By the time Davos reached the harbor barricade, the streets buzzed with tales. Ironborn raiders already scaling the quays, gray-eyed krakens slashing through sailors. None yet true, but fear seldom waited for proof. Atop a makeshift palisade of hogsheads, Davos found Ser Brienne of Tarth, drilling volunteers. Dock thieves, apprentices in ill-fitting mail, 2 septas clutching quarterstaves. Brienne's blue cloak snapped like a pennant. Sweat striped her brow though the morning breeze was cool. She greeted Davos with a curt nod. "I need pikes, not pitchforks." "You'll have them," Davos promised, though he had no notion how. "Greyjoy sails 3 weeks out if rivers run honest. But we must stiffen the port now." His gaze swept the harbor. Carracks rigged for trade, river barges, a lone Braavosi galley, with crimson eyes painted at her prow. All fragile eggshells before ironborn rams. "Send runners upriver, commandeer every stout hull. We dig fire trenches here, and across the limewalk." His knobby finger tapped Brienne's crude chalk map. "I. If Euron blows that horn and turns dragons." Brienne's lips tightened. "Daenerys will not yield her children." "Pray you're right." Davos caught a whiff of tallow smoke and thought of Dragonstow's dungeons, where a red priestess once muttered that shadows have claws. Gods help them if Euron's horn proved more than brine-barrel boasting. Beyond the arbor, Daenerys Targaryen soared above rippling vineyards on Drogon's back, Rhaegal and Viserion wheeling parallel. Sunlight pierced the dragon's translucent wings, casting blood-red stains upon green slopes. Below, unsullied columns marched in precise cadence along the Roserad, spear points gilded by morning. Dothraki outriders rode ahead, hooting, delighted by the fragrant breeze that carried none of Meereen's corpse. Yet Daenerys' smile wilted as the Hightower's distant beacon winked. Each league westward sharpened memory of the council's murmurings, merchants praising her dragons for ending the long night, yet begging she keep them leashed lest their granaries char. Septons hailing her as mother reborn while insisting a woman should not sit the son of dawn alone. Even Jon Snow, earnest as ever, advised restraint, reminding her that fire once burned at Harrenhal's cost. She pressed gloved fingers to Drogon's warm scales. They want harvest without ashes, she told the wind. But if ashes sicken their tongues, they should have banned kings a century ago. Below, Ser Jorah Mormont guided his destroyer beside Grey Worm's stride. Jorah shaded his eyes, and Daenerys read the question in his lifted hand. "Shall we descend, my queen?" She leaned in Drogon's ear, whispered Valyrian syllables. The dragon banked, and the haze of spring blossomed into earth rushing upward. They landed in a meadow of lavender. Dothraki scattered grazing goats, unsullied, formed a cordon. Jorah dismounted, leading his queen beneath swaying cypress. "Word from Old Town wires nerves," he said. "The council debates whether to quarter our army outside its walls." "To keep my pets away from libraries," Daenerys said dryly. He offered a crooked grin. "Books burn at the same heat as men." Grey Worm strode up, scroll clenched. "A raven from Ser Brienne," he announced. "Ironborn threat. The fleet of storm god Euron sails to sack the Mander. They beg our aerial aid." Daenerys unrolled the parchment. Brienne's blunt hand. Davos countersign. A sketch of the kraken horn, runes twisting like tentacles. Beneath, a single stark plea. "If this horn truly binds dragons, your children must stay clear until we know." Her blood chilled. She remembered Korth's warlocks, how their shade of the evening clung to her tongue like rot, how their thin necromancer tried to lure Drogon with ghostly chains. She remembered slavers branding children with her likeness to bait her into rash assault. Sorcery could lie, but it could kill truth while lying. "Grey Worm," she said, voice steady. "Double outriders. We ride all night. Jorah, dispatch ravens to the council. We will stand in Old Town before the moon's turn. If the Greyjoys breach the river first, like beacon towers, they shall herald true dragon's fury." "Ben?" Drogon's rumble answered, deep as tectonic shift. In the Vale of Arryn, Sansa Stark guided Sweet Robin's trembling hands across a newly built snow castle. An echo of Winterfell sculpted upon the Erie's garden terrace. Spring came late atop Sky's reach. Shards of winter lingered, but Sansa coaxed crocuses through frost. Lords Declarant watched with wary respect. This red-haired wolf had tamed the falcon Aerie without sword nor scream, weaving courtesy like silk rope around little Lord Robert's flighty heart. With Stannis' abdication, rumor crowned Sansa the North's moral compass, sweet as maiden's hymn yet steeled by knights clutched beneath Ramsay Bolton's claws. A raven arrived at dusk, its black feet clutching wax sealed with the crowned stag. Sansa slit the letter and read beneath torchlight. Her fingers trembled by the final line. "The council desires a stark voice to temper southern heat. Come, with blade or with quill." She looked toward the weeping horizon. It had taken years, but Winterfell's call came at last. Yet the path wound through serpents' dens. Cersei still lingered in the Red Keep's petrified gardens, Qyburn whispering viper seeds. Euron's kraken cult lashed at waves. And dragons, three mighty hearts, beat thunder over the reach. Sansa brushed flecks of snow from her cloak and went to Lord Jon Royce. "Arm the knights," she said. "The Aerie flies to Old Town. But first we collect the north, Carhold, Bear Island, White Harbor. Lady Lyanna Mormont will not let a kraken crack our walls while we tarry." Tell Glover and Reed, we march before next full moon. Then show. Royce's eyes glinted admiration. And young Lord Robert? He rides with me, Sansa answered. He will see a realm worth ruling, or he will see the cost of failing it. In King's Landing, silence draped the Red Keep like a burial shroud. Cersei Lannister paced the Tower of the Hand, skirts whispering across marble. Qyburn hovered at her elbow, pale hands folded. Loras Tyrell's ashes lay in a silver urn upon the mantel, though Cersei had no love for the Knight of Flowers. He served as reminder that flowers rot first under frost. The council fractures, Qyburn murmured. They quarrel over who chairs committees of grain, whether cobblers deserve vote equal to knights. Beneath each argument hums panic that your grace might return in force. My grace, Cersei echoed, bitter smile. Crownless, coin-starved, but her pride wore steel. Stannis stripped titles, yet he left lion claws. How fares my cousin at Casterly Rock? Dan? Sir Davin rebuilds levy rosters, quietly. The Rock's gold flows still if slower. Your brother's fleets anchor at Lannisport, guarding coastlines from Ironborn drift. Euron's Horn is no drift. Cersei halted before a window overlooking Blackwater Bay. Decaying warships bobbed like gnawed bones beyond the battered chain tower. If he turns dragons, he will roast the council, torch Old Town's libraries, and make me Queen of Cinder. Yet I cannot sit idle. She spun to Qyburn. Rouse the silent sisters in the city, the orphans, every rat that gnaws sewer bones. Let them whisper that the council intends to outlaw the faith, seize sept lands, wed highborn daughters to small folk. Lies but lies plant seeds. When riots blossom, we ride in with Lion's Guard to restore order. Qyburn bowed, half-smile corpse pale. Shall I instruct Sir Robert Strong to accompany me? Cersei's gaze flicked to the hulking knight in white enamel armor, standing immobile near the door. Gregor Clegan's reanimated shell. Not yet. The mountain is a last resort. If a dragon crosses this sea, then unveil him. Then? They shall. She poured arbor red, sipped. It tasted of iron. Send Raven to Pike, she added. If Euron seeks gods, a goddess offers sacrifice. Mine enemies' heads. At the wall, snows melted into runnels that carved worm roads through black ice. Jon Snow strode the battlements, ghost padding silent. Ravens croaked love songs to warming sun, but Jon's thoughts remained winter-bound. Stannis' abdication left Jon Warden of the North, but the title weighed heavier than Lord Commander's cloak ever had. The Night's Watch rebuilt towers, oversaw free folk settlements on the Gift, but beyond Skagos dark wings wheeled, Southorio's plague ships. Some claimed, others whispered woken krakens. Jon trusted no rumors now. He paused above the gatehouse, where young Ned Umber drilled spear lines beside wildling youths. The boy lord's cheeks flushed crimson, hair bright as rust. Each thrust of his crude spear bled frost from the earth. A child forging peace with repetition. Tormund Giantsbane scrambled up the ladder, braid swinging. Lord Snow, Raven from Old Town. He waved parchment. Kraken King's sails, dragons hasten, council begs northern steel. Jon accepted the message, eyes narrowing. We ride south. Leave half the watch to hold the wall. Sir Alistair commands, hell sneer, but hell obey. Free folk may choose, but tell them Greyjoy axes want spare wildling tents. Tormund clapped Jon's shoulder. They've no love for sea wolves, will come. Jon's thoughts skipped to Sansa, to Bran's greenseer whispers from Winterfell's godswood. Shapes of shadow behind black sails, a horn's wail-splitting sky. He felt the weirwood's dream still pulsing in his veins, cold, sap-sweet. He looked east where sunlight trembled beyond the frost fangs, and for an instant he glimpsed a shape spiraling there. A shard of midnight, a memory of the Night King's steed dissolved to ashes. Fear lingered like phantom pain. Tell the ravens, he said, voice tight. The north marches. In Old Town's harbor, the first fire trench was lit at dusk. Bitumen and seawater hissed. Orange tongues danced above black pools. Brienne posted archers with fire arrows on every crane arm. Davos oversaw carpenters bolting scorpion racks atop the Hightower's lower platform. The city buzzed like a hive prodded by stick. Schemes, prayers, curses. Yet, in the conspiratorial dark progress gleamed. The Smallfolk Council had voted to open granaries to volunteers, and bakers worked through nights kneading oatcakes for pikelines. Gold cloaks new minted, simple leather jerkins bearing stitched tower and stag sigils, patrolled with pride. Maester Samwell emerged from the citadel burdened with tomes on Valyrian horns. 2 novice maesters accompanied him, lugging a glass candle. One of the 4 awakened after centuries dim. They claimed to have spied Euron's fleet in flames, ships with sails like wings of night, a blood moon dripping upon the waves. Sam presented their visions to the council in the Hightower's library, where seats of lords and small folk faced each other across a long table. Candlelight shimmered on wary eyes. Tyrion Lannister lounged at the table's center, bandaged hand cradling wine. "We rely on glass for the truth," he quipped, "and glass shatters at a shout. Still, diner or not, the image chills. We need assurance the dragons remain ours." Da. Lady Barbary Dustin, seated with northern delegates, sneered. "Dragons are no one's but their own. Better clothe your city in stone scales if you fear them." Sir Davos raised a placating palm. "Daenerys Targaryen fights for the living." She proved that at Frostfang Pass. His voice rang rough, unwavering. "But she will not chain her children for our comfort. We must prepare for either blade, Euron's or Dragonfire." From the small folk benches a cobbler named Myri nodded. She had lost her husband to flayed men near Dreadfort years ago. Now she knew courage's cost. If dragons burn Euron's fleet, the storm ends. If they burn our city, our trust was misplaced. Either risk is better than bowing to Kraken cults. Debate flared. Yet as lanterns guttered, common and lord alike aligned upon action. Strengthen harbor defenses, gather healers, and send envoys bearing peace tokens to Daenerys. White banners stitched with sigils of tower, stag, wolf, and dragon intertwined. Tyrion penned the greeting himself, gilding it with humor and history enough to stir the Dragon Queen's curiosity. Ravens launched before dawn. Euron Greyjoy's armada churned the sunset sea beneath curling storm cloud. Black sails cracked like whips above decks strewn with charred bones of Ibanese whalers kidnapped at sea, sacrificed to Euron's midnight rites. On Silence's forecastle, the Kraken King leaned against the rail, moonlight silvering the patch over his gouged eye. The Valyrian horn rested across armored knees, etched runes throbbing faint red as if alive. A bruised priest of the drowned god knelt chained, lips stitched. Euron stroked the horn's rim. Meraxes sang to Aegon, he mused. Balerion bowed to flame and blood. Why not Drogon to storm and salt? A warlock of Qarth approached, robes soaked dark with rank water. "The Dragon Queen comes," he rasped. Her children burn bright across glass candles. Yet their will is iron. Bend them, and they will break the world. Euron's laugh rolled across deck. "Break it, reshape it. Gods are not carpenters. They are storms. When I sound this note, Old Town's council will weep worship, and Cersei's iron lions will gnaw my leavings for scraps." "Nenderwam? Elisi." He rose, lifting the horn. The runes pulsed like embers stoked. Crewmen shrank back, eyes bleeding. Euron drew breath, but withheld the call. "Not yet," he purred. "Too near the Isle of Cedars. Let the trees witness first. Fuel for the pyre to announce me." He gestured. Drummers beat. The armada veered toward whispering groves on a shadowed shore. Day 17 of the march found Daenerys' army camped by the Blueburn. Green tents huddling like dragon scales along the water. Dusk cooled the sky to lavender. Grey Worm inspected perimeter stakes. Jorah reported horizon clear. Yet Daenerys paced by Drogon, unsettled. Her dragon sensed it. Rhaegal snapped at phantom prey. Viserion keened. Missandei approached, offering honey milk. "Your Grace," She murmured, "Our scouts intercepted ravens from the arbor." They speak of wildfire caches stolen from King's Landing, vanished en route to Old Town. Saboteurs stalk ahead. Daenerys felt a knot tighten. "You're on again?" "Perhaps Cersei," Missandei answered. "Or both. Green fire tastes no allegiance." Then, Daenerys' gaze drifted to the young recruits sharpening spears, faces shadowed by torch glow. So many placed their hopes in her fire, yet fire mirrored hope and horror alike. She recalled Astapor's bricks, dripping flesh, remembered Myriene's children nailed to mileposts. "Send riders," she ordered. "Find the missing wildfire. If the Kraken wields green fire and the Lion plots riots, Old Town will drown before we reach it." Menso. A candle's emerald tongue lit the vault beneath Pommel Square, where two raw-boned acolytes of the faith militant unfolded parchment maps of Old Town's sewers. The High Sparrow stooped overhead, palms pressed. He instructed them softly. "Ignite storehouses where Dornish spice and Dornish wine lay in abundance. Stoke famine's fear so the council's promises ring hollow." They nodded, fervor bright as wildfire in their eyes. Outside, gold cloaks threaded alleys, posting proclamations. Markets to reopen, grain tithes halved, justice seats to hear grievances each dawn. But men with empty bellies seldom raid. Word of dragon ally and kraken foe tangled among tavern tongues, birthing dark hybrid. Dragon kraken, devil monster that would swallow children and coin alike. The High Sparrow needed only spark. He lifted splintered dreams and shaped them into torches. As unrest brewed, Davos Seaworth found himself summoned to the Citadel's Ravenry at moonrise. Samwell greeted him beside massive black oak doors, cheeks anointed with ink smudges. Archmaester Velen decoded a passage. Sam whispered, leading Davos among cooing ravens. Lanterns swung overhead, casting barred shadows. They halted before a lectern where parchment unfurled across books bound in skin. Ellen, an aged woman with spectacles like jeweled beetles, tapped a passage in High Valyrian. "The horn you fear, dragon binder, was forged for the fall of God's grief," she said. "Its tune kills the blower, enslaves the dragon, but only if the dragon's name is woven in blood upon the horn's coils." She traced the runes sketched from Brienne's letter. "These glyphs speak of Leviathan, not of Drogon or Rhaegal. Euron may kill himself sounding it, yet the dragons could still rage uncontrolled." Davos scratched his beard. "So we might gain a mad beast and lose a mad king in one note." "Worse," Valen said. "If the horn fails, Euron's death might feed whatever sorcery he courts. Blood is power. I advise arrowheads dipped in obsidian to pierce the horn before sound." "Dandaho." Davos exhaled. "We'll ready archers on every tower." The moon waned to a sliver when Sansa Stark's column clattered through the gates of White Harbor. Wyman Manderley welcomed her beneath arching lanterns carved like leaping merlings. His girth had slackened since the war, but his voice rang hearty. "Lady Sansa, the city hungers for your voice. We sail at first tide, 5 cogs, 3 carracks. Lord Robert will have a featherbed fit for falcon dreams." Sansa inclined her head, copper hair shimmering. "My thanks, Lord Wyman. Yet we march further north before we sail south." She turned to the crowd of fisherfolk lining the quay. "Winterfell calls. Every heart that knelt to the crowned stag, rise now for the dire wolf. If your nets lie empty, fill them with hope. The North's honor will walk with us." A cheer lifted fog from the bay. Bells rang, echoing across brine. And beneath the chime Sansa heard her father's voice, soft in memory. "A promise must be kept, or it breaks you." She felt its weight in her marrow and prayed it would fortify, not fracture, when trials came. Old Town's bells clanged midday as the first spires of dragonfire speared the sky. Watchmen atop the high tower shouted. 3 shapes approached from east, vast wings blotting sun. Crowds flooded streets, half awed, half panicked. Davos raced to Brienne at the harbor palisade. "Signal, archers. Hold unless I raise the stag banner," he ordered. He climbed a watchtower, heart hammering. Tar-thick smoke from fire trenches twisted upward, yet above it he saw the dragons. Black, green, and pale gold, scales glittering. They banked slow, deliberate, displaying trust. Below, unsullied spearheads rippled along the Roserad, Dothraki banners like wind-swept flame. A rider on pale mare galloped ahead, Ser Jorah. Davos descended to meet him at gate's edge. "You cut timing close," Davos greeted wryly. Jorah dismounted, face stern. "Euron lands before nightfall at the Cedars. The Queen will meet your council at dusk, if you grant Drogon shelter inside the walls." Davos weighed risk, nodded. "Tie him near the sept. If the seven object, they can pray louder." Gates yawned. The dragon circled once, then alighted upon the plaza of old King Uther's garden. Stone cracked, fountains trembled, yet the beasts folded wings docile as hunting hounds. People stared, forgot fear long enough to remember wonder. Daenerys dismounted first, silver braids gleaming. Tyrion stepped forward, bowed, flourished. She offered half-smile. "You will find no chains fit my children's necks, imp." "I would not try," Tyrion replied. "Their breath curdles wine." Davos knelt. "Your Grace, the council thanks you. But we face more than Kraken sails. Cersei stirs riots and wildfire caches have vanished." Daenerys' gaze hardened. "Then let us douse both flames in one stroke. Show me your harbor defenses." As guides led her through battlements, across market squares where small folk gaped, a tremor rippled the cobbles, the first riot spark. At Tallow Menagerie, Faith militant smashed wine barrels claimed unholy. Small folk shouted, gold cloaks moved to intervene. An urchin lobbed torch. Flames whooshed along spilled wine. Panic surged. Daenerys saw smoke curl, recognized chaos scent as keenly as dragonfire. She swung into the saddle, commanded Drogon aloft. The dragon's roar thundered across avenues, drowning screams. People froze, eyes wide. Drogon hovered, wings beating gale, yet his jaws remained closed. Stillness fell like snow. Fire gutters died beneath his shadow as gusts snuffed them. Riot quelled by awe, not fear. Daenerys landed. She addressed the gathering throng. "Your city is not mine to burn. It is ours to guard. Kraken, lion, shadow, none shall take it if we stand united. Go home, feed your children. Tomorrow we forge peace in the flames' light, not its teeth." The crowd murmured, astonishment, relief. Some knelt, others merely breathed again. Daenerys turned to Davos. "Send word. The council meets tonight. We must agree upon war plan before the moon is full orange." Night draped black velvet across the Hightower's council chamber. Candles flickered along long tables now crowded. Daenerys, Jon Snow newly arrived dust-cloaked, Sansa Stark in wolf grey, Tyrion, Davos, Samwell, Brienne, Grey Worm, Lord Manderly, Lady Dustin, Tormund, Jon Royce, and 3 small folk seats. Myri the Cobbler, Bormund the Dockhand, Sister Aelia of the Orphan Hospital. Maps unrolled, coastlines, estuaries, windrose predictions. Euron's fleet, marked in black shards drifting toward the Manor Delta. Tyrion pointed with quill. Held beach at Seaguard within 2 days. Stone shorelines make ramming difficult, but forts there are old, undermanned. Jon rubbed stubble. The North's fleet can harry his rear, but ice still chokes the bite. Daenerys listened, fingertips laced. Dothraki ride better than they row. My dragons can torch hulls but not hold rivers. Her gaze swept smallfolk delegates. You know these tides. Bormund swallowed. And lord or m'lady, the Mander's mouth squirms with sandbars. Kraken keels run deep. We could drive iron stakes, rope nets, slow them for Dragon Pass. Now, Sister Aelia added, fishing boats lie moored idle, rig them with pitch, send them adrift into the Armada as fire ships. Tyrion's grin quirked. The wildfire would serve here if we retrieve it. Davos nodded. I'll lead a night raid up the Honeywine to recover the stolen jars. Sansa tapped map near Highgarden. Lady Olenna stores sapphire oil caverns. If rivers run green with fire, we must shepherd refugees inland. Lord Manderley dispatched grain barges upriver. Plans layered like quilt. Grey Worm proposed unsullied spear screens along causeways. Brienne volunteered to command citadel archers. Jon pledged giants to haul scorpions. When strategy crystallized, Tyrion poured wine. Let it be known, this is the first war council of realm and commons equal. Sansa met Daenerys' eyes. Let us hope it is not the last. South of the Cedars, Euron's men piled driftwood into a pyre towering thrice a mast. Warlocks laced the horn with powdered dragonglass. Beneath a half-eaten moon, Euron ascended, cloak whipping. He blew one test note. Sound erupted like riven souls, brass and agony. Blood streaked his lips. Flames on the pyre hissed, turned an eerie shade between violet and coal. Dolphins flung themselves on shore, eyes boiling. Euron laughed crimson froth. Hear that, world? Your new god clears his throat. He raised the horn again, stopped. Along the horizon glimmered pinpricks, lanterns bobbing. A slow grin spread. Old Town's fishwives sailed to greet me. He gestured. Reavers hauled anchor. Silence led the charge, slicing foam. Dawn broke over Old Town with air sharp as flint. Davos Raid had reclaimed 6 wagons of wildfire. Jars now nested in wicker cradles aboard press-ganged barges, sails painted white. Unsullied lined quays, lances glittering. Above, Tyrion stood beside Daenerys on the Hightower balcony. Spyglass trained seaward. Mists parted. Black sails appeared, vast as thunderheads. Euron's fleet swallowed the horizon. Tyrion whistled low. He wasted no time. Daenerys' jaw tightened. Drogon. The dragon answered before the name left her tongue, leaping skyward. Rhaegal and Viserion followed. Sea wind beat their wings, sun lit their backs molten. Beneath, fireships pushed off. Crewed by volunteers, guided by Myri and Bormund among them, each armed with torch and knife, to sever mooring at last moment. Brienne watched from harbor palisade, heart pounding. Davos stood near, fingers brushing a pocket where he kept pieces of his carved wooden stag, a talisman of his lost son. The dragon swept low first, strafing with scorching breath, igniting outermost reaver galleys. Euron answered with scorpion bolts tipped in glass so black it drank light. One bolt scraped Viserion's wing, tore scale but not tendon. The dragon shrieked, wheeled furious. Euron lifted the horn, blood-painting teeth. He blew. The note rolled across waves like mountains grinding. Deckhands clutched heads. Warlocks chanted throats raw-dot. A shiver rippled through Drogon. Daenerys felt it like ice in veins. Drogon's wings faltered, eyes flicking amber blue. But the bond held. She whispered in Valyrian. I am blood of the dragon, you are mine. Drogon roared defiance, flames spilling. The horn cracked down its length, searing Euron's hand. Smoke hissed from runes now dark. But Euron's laugh soared, mad, triumphant. Gods bled yet live. Silence's scorpion loosed a bolt of star steel stolen from Ashai. It grazed Drogon's thigh. Pain spurred fury. Drogon dived, claws outstretched, tore Silence's forecastle. Timbers splintered. Sailors pitched, screaming. But Euron scampered nimble, slammed axe into incoming talon, severed scale. He sprang onto the horn's shattered stump, brandishing sword. Meanwhile, fireships found purchase. Myri's barge slammed a Kraken flanker. She hurled torch, leaped into sea before flames whooshed. Wildfire sprayed jade cataclysm. Reaver hulls ignited. Screams turned raw. Yet some barges sank prematurely, jars cracking underwater. Plumes of toxic green geyser shot upward through decks, choking men on both sides. Tyrion watched horror and awe twine. Too much fire always, he muttered. On shore, unsullied drums thundered. Davos signaled giants to heave scorpion towers onto rebuilt walls. Arrows streaked. In the sky, Rhaegal caught wind, set 3 ships ablaze with sweeping breath, then veered to avoid bolts. Viserion circled Euron's command but hesitated. Horn's echo lingered like rot. Euron seized moment. He hurled a glass sphere taken from warlocks, shattered against Viserion's chest in cloud of amethyst smoke. The dragon coughed, disoriented. Euron howled, leapt from mast onto dragon's shoulder like wasp on bull. He hacked at wing membrane. Black blood rained. On the high tower balcony, Daenerys felt stab of twin pain in her chest. She urged Drogon down, but raging pyres obscured silence. Tyrion shouted. Sieg whistle screamed. Brienne signaled Davos archers. 3 shafts flew. Tips of dragon glass dipped in nightshade. 2 missed. 1 struck Euron's thigh. He faltered but clung, drove dagger deeper in membrane. Viserion shrieked, rolled. Sudden trumpet blasted from inland. Horn of the Rose. Highgarden's hastily gathered cavalry erupted onto shore flank, led by Lady Olenna astride palfrey, scowling like wrathful grandmother. Dornish skirmishers followed, spears dipped in scorpion venom. Ironborn rearguard broke, scattering into shallows. Yet silence remained, crippled, but afloat. Davos shouted to Brienne, "The horn!" She understood, vaulted onto Quay Crane. Seized. Thick mooring rope. With grunt she swung over water, landing on deck of a fishing ketch half burned. She commandeered sailors, steered towards silence, oars churning. As they neared, Drogon descended, claws tearing mast roots, showering sparks. Euron toppled into rigging but clambered back, dripping blood. He brandished sword to Daenerys' shadow above. "Come, dragon whore." But another roar answered. Jon Snow charged along the quay on borrowed horse, Longclaw raised. He spurred onto pier, leapt from saddle to anchor chain, trailing silence. Tormund behind him bellowed curses, loosed rope to reel in. Jon swung onto deck, blade flashing Valyrian steel. He met Euron amid broken timbers. Sword rang upon axe. Euron's grin split, blood sloshed. "Ice and salt, dead man's froth," he sang. Jon's riposte, severed strap, supporting Euron's pauldron. The Kraken King feinted, slammed fist into Jon's jaw, but Jon recovered, drove pommel into wounded thigh. Euron staggered, Jon pressed. Yet wave lurched, throwing both. Above, Viserion, frantic, clipped yardarm. It snapped, flinging shards. A spar crashed between duelists, splitting deck. Flames licked closer. Jon crawled, coughing. Euron clutched, shattered horn half. Brienne's ketch bumped hull. She vaulted with Zweihander drawn. "Pick on someone your size," she rasped, swinging. Euron parried. Sparks showering. Jon regained feet, joined flank. 2 blades drove Kraken back. Hefting horn stump like club, Euron bashed Brienne, staggered her. He laughed, wild, raw, until Davos' arrow whistled, lodging in his exposed throat. Sound cut to gurgle. Axe slipped. Jon lunged, Longclaw piercing mail, ribs, heart. Eyes glazed, sea blue dim. Silence cracked amidships, succumbing to fire. Brienne grabbed Jon, hauled toward rail. Davos' voice called above roar, rope thrown. They leapt, splashed into foaming sea. Behind them, Viserion's wing beat blew flames aside, claws plucking Euron's corpse as silence sank, a trophy to scorch far-flung tide. Smoke cleared by dusk. Burned hulks bobbed charred. Tide carried cinders to sandy coves, where children would one day find black pearls of wildfire glass and wonder at giants. Old Town's harbor, though battered, still stood, its towers intact. Small folk lined quays, cheering dragons now circling calm. On the Plaza Daenerys dismounted, stroking Viserion's injured flank as maesters applied salve. She glanced at Jon emerging soaked, nose gashed, but alive. Their eyes met. Shared relief. threaded through exhaustion. Nearby, Davos knelt, breathing thanks to 7 and unnamed gods. Brienne wrung water from braids, smirked. Tyrion approached, raising cup. "To a council that holds," he said. But Sansa touched his wrist. "Holds, yes, yet tomorrow we rebuild again." Jon joined them, arm brushing Sansa's. He addressed the gathering circle, lords and smallfolk, unsullied and wildlings, septons and silent sisters tending fallen. Today proved crowns and coin mean little. A cobbler's courage burned ships. A farmer's arrow felled a king. Let this be remembrance, rule is shared or lost. Daenerys nodded, voice low but carrying. "I came seeking throne but found purpose greater. I will sit your council seat as one among you, not above. Let dragons guard skies, let men and women craft peace." Murmurs swelled, astonishment, hope. Sister Elia wiped soot, whispered, "So may it be." Weeks fell away like petals. Reconstruction hummed. Masons repaired quays. Carpenters raised new masts from cedars spared fire. Wildfire shards were entombed in stone vaults under Citadel Lock. Cersei's agents stirred but found city united. Riots fizzled for lack of fear. Word spread of Ironborn survivors kneeling to Yara Greyjoy, who swore fealty to the council in exchange for amnesty, and a fleet pledged to trade rather than reaving. From Dorne snaked rumor that Prince Quentyn considered marriage alliance with Lady Asha to knot coasts in peace. The Reach sowed fields again, with Manderley grain barges feeding villages. Tyrion traveled to King's Landing, coaxing Lannister factions into treaty. Gold mines taxed for river rebuilding, in return for voices on commerce committees. Cersei railed, but Sir Robert Strong vanished one misty dawn. Some whispered Brienne met him beneath a moonless sky. Others claimed Qyburn spirited him away toward darker mastery. Either way, the lioness's menace dimmed. Stannis Baratheon, freed of court weight, toured Storm's End's storm-bent villages rebuilding dikes, teaching children letters. Shireen accompanied, reading aloud from 1,000 ships to fisherfolk, her laughter unscarred by memory. Melisandre vanished northward beyond the wall. Some said she sought fire and shadow, some that she dissolved into dawn once her purpose burnt bright. In Old Town's starry sept, the Second Council convened beneath banners newly woven, a ring of 7 emblems: dire wolf, dragon, crowned stag, rose, kraken, sunspear, tower, encircling a black feather raven clutching wheat, symbol of the small folk. Resolutions passed voice by voice, not sword by sword. None pretended discord died, but each knew the cost of letting discord fester. On a balcony overlooking the harbor, Daenerys, Jon, and Sansa watched sunset gilt cranes. Drogon dozed curled around a lighthouse base, content. Ships unfurled white sails bearing blue kraken of peace. Others bore wolf and sun, rose and dragon entwined. They slipped seaward, bound for ports. Hungry for trade, not terror. Sansa broke silence first. "Do you think our children will speak of kings and queens as stories rather than chains?" Jon smiled, weary yet real. "Stories shape chains, but they can shatter them too. Let's tell the right ones." Daenerys laid hand on Drogon's warm scale. "And keep watch," she added. "For dragons dream restless, and men forget." She glanced to the citadel where Samwell drafted new chronicles. "But today we breathe free, and that is worth every scar." Bells told evensong. Across rooftops, candle glow blossomed like 1,000 tiny dawns holding night at bay. Fire, yet gentle. Ice, yet thawing. A realm stood upon uncertain legs, but it stood. Because once, in winter's black heart, a hard king dared lay down his crown, a dragon queen dared share her flight, and common hearts dared meet them in the middle. Above, the dragons stirred wings that beat thunder into dusk. Their silhouettes merged with clouds ablaze in afterglow. 3 dark shards soaring toward horizon, guardians and reminders both, tracing arcs of promise over a kingdom still learning how to keep its balance between heat and chill. In their wake, the sky closed calm and clean, and the first true stars of spring blinked into place, as if to sign their names on the fresh page of history. a page no longer titled by blade or throne, but by the fragile, stubborn word that had anchored every oath these months past. Justice. A hush had fallen over Old Town's harbor in the small hours before dawn, broken only by the clack of lines against spars and the muted mutter of watchmen stamping numb feet. Yet beneath the stillness, the city lived on a slow-rolling pulse, each heartbeat a ship's lantern bobbing on tide, a baker firing dark ovens, a raven shaking dew from wings before the first courier flight. And somewhere beyond the hide hour's pale beacon, a new morning waited, luminous and perilous, because peace, like any newborn thing, could be smothered in its crib if those who midwifed it dared ease their vigilance. Davos Seaworth had never been much for easing. He stood atop the southern barbican, elbows propped on pitted merlon, and studied the horizon for shapes of menace. Salt kissed his lips. Gulls drifted white as parchment scraps above shoals. Hard to believe, looking at that sleepy pane of sea glass, that only a fortnight past the water had boiled emerald with wildfire and black with burning kraken sails. Harder still to believe that the council beneath his feet, lords and crofters, dragon queen and wolf regent, had not splintered under the strain. Yet there they remained, breathing the same uncertain air, bound by the raw memory of having survived each other's doubts. His breath steamed. Spring had come, but winter's fingers still traced the edges of dawn. Davos curled gloved hands and tried to feel the warm hearth waiting at storm's end, the small stone keep he had begun to restore beside the larger fortress as a quiet home for his wife. But duty kept him here, duty and something else. A stubborn conviction that if he left too soon the fragile tapestry of justice their unlikely alliance had woven might unravel to loose threads on the wind. Boots sounded behind him. Brienne of Tarth strode into the half-light, mail hauberk clinking softly under a wool cloak, dyed the blue of deep fjords. "You'll freeze your wits," she said, voice low. "Won't be the first Chillis tried," Davos answered with a half-smirk. "Nor the first wit lost, if you ask some." Brienne joined him at the parapet. They looked seaward a while, companions in silence. When she spoke again, her tone carried a guarded weight. "The queen has asked for you. Dragon or rose?" "The dragon." Brienne's lips twitched at his jest, then sobered. "Her council gathers after sunrise. Scouts returned in the night. News from King's Landing." "No." Davos grimaced. "I needn't ask if it's pleasant." "No." Brienne's gaze wandered toward the eastern sky, where a faint scarlet smear heralded dawn. "Qyburn's traces are all over the tail." Davos pushed off the merlon. "Lead on." They crossed the rampart walk, descended a spiral stair that smelled of salt wet stone and lamp oil. Within the Hideour's base, flickering torches painted broad arcs on the rough walls. Unsullied guards greeted them with nods and stepped aside. At the council doors Tyrion Lannister waited, hair a tousled halo of gold and silver in the sconce light. "Master Seaworth," he greeted. "Sir Brienne." He offered Davos a wineskin. "Mulled. Keeps the ghosts at bay." Davos declined with a wan smile. "If the ghosts of Blackwater still haunt your wine, imp, they'll haunt mine worse." Tyrion's eyes glittered. "These days we drink together rather than flinging wildfire. Progress, I say." He tucked the skin beneath his arm and pushed open heavy oak doors. The council chamber, once the Hightower's chart room, had been stripped of its brass sextants and dusty globes. Now a long oaken table dominated the center, flanked by plain benches. A hearth crackled to the right, its mantle draped in the new banner of united sigils stitched into a ring. Direwolf, dragon, stag, tower, kraken, rose, sunspear, trident, raven with wheat. Above the ring, the broken iron throne's melted crown had been forged into a circlet of 7 interlocking points, no single spike sharper than another. Jon Snow had called it the Crown of Voices. Daenerys preferred no crown at all, but she had allowed this compromise because compromise, she had discovered, was the currency of peace. Daenerys stood at the hearth now, hands clasped, light dancing along the pale scars old whips had left on her wrists. She wore riding leathers the color of ash, the better to vanish amid her dragon's wings. a queen forever ready to take flight. At the tables, Sansa Stark sat straight-backed, draped in snow-gray velvet, auburn hair bound by a simple bronze circlet of deerwolves chasing each other's tails. Jon Snow leaned over her shoulder, murmuring, whatever he said lost beneath the low roar of flames. Samwell Tarly and Maester Valen consulted parchment beside Myri the cobbler. Tormund Giantsbane dozed, boots on bench, red beard pooled on his chest. Sister Aelia counted knucklebones in deliberate habit while humming a hymn to the mother. Grey Worm motioned Davos to an open seat. The Onion Knight bowed to Daenerys and nodded greeting to the others before settling. Tyrion clambered onto a stool, just as a bell clanged thrice in the corridor. Sam's signal for order. Daenerys spoke first. Scouts have ridden from the Blackwater Rush. Her voice carried a rasp these days, earned in the smoke of battle yet softened by nights spent reading charter drafts with Tyrion and Sansa. They confirm rumors we feared. Qyburn has loosed plague in the capital. A hush fell. Samwell spread a parchment showing crude diagrams of sores and weeping lesions. The rat catchers found the first bodies in Flea Bottom. He said, tone hushed but sure. An affliction unknown in the Citadel's indexes. Fever blisters like blooming pustules, lungs fill with black fluid. Death within a day. Worse, the bodies rise again. Oh. Brienne's gauntlet creaked. Whites. Of a kind, Sam said. Not pale shadows. These are sick-fevered stumbling, but they bite. Each bite births new infection. Jon cursed under breath. Sansa's eyes widened, then narrowed. Qyburn weaponizes the walker's horror. He crafts a plague of dead to turn the small folk against us, so we must invade to save them, and thus look conquerors again. But how? Davos asked. The magic that animated the others died with them. Maester Valen blew out a breath. The winds that birthed that magic may linger in pockets. Cairns of trapped sorcery, relic daggers of dragonglass still humming. A cunning mind could splice plague with such residue. Qyburn is nothing if not cunning. Tyrion swigged the wine. Cersei's final gambit. If she cannot rule a living kingdom, she'll rule a dead one, and make us butcher of both. Daenerys stepped into the circle of candlelight. We ride. Today. If King's Landing falls to plague, the realm's heart rots. My dragon's fire can cauterize streets. Burn plague, burn risen corpses, leave ash but spare living within cordons. Bah! Jon met her gaze. Ash shames hope. We've asked our people to trust the fire. If the city burns, trust burns too. My dragons can temper flame, Daenerys said softly. They will not loose Blackwater's hell again. Sansa rose. I will accompany. Without Stark eyes, rumors will flourish. The North should witness the Queen's mercy. Tyrion's brows lifted. A Lannister accompanies as well. He winced. Though I'd rather drink wildfire. Brienne folded arms. You'll need ground command to keep order while dragons work. I can muster 1,000 Citadel archers, 200 unsullied shield lines. Tormund cracked eyelids. Giants go south. Warm sun on bones. He yawned mightily. We come. A ripple of laughter eased tension. Plans unfurled. Grey Worm would lead 2 cohorts through the Roserad. Davos sailed with Manderley horse archers via the Gullet, aiming to blockade Blackwater Bay against escape by infected ships. Samwell begged passage to test counter-serums. Jon insisted the wall not be stripped. He would remain north of the city's cordon, commanding relief camps on the Roserad to treat refugees pouring out. Daenerys would strike from the air. Sansa and Tyrion would negotiate surrender of the Red Keep, or failing that, isolate Cersei's forces within Maegor's holdfast. The council sealed accords with ink and, more binding, clasped hands. When they filed out, Daenerys caught Davos' sleeve. You have seen the inside of fire and lived, she murmured. Tell me true. Am I about to repeat the sins of my father? Davos studied the young queen. In the firelight her silver hair seemed forged of blade edges, but her violet eyes held tendrils of doubt few rulers admitted. He remembered Storm's End under siege, how he had smuggled onions to save a rightful king, and how pride had forged horror on Dragonstone's pyres. Stannis too had sought to do right, and found hell in the doing. The choice is always ash or chains, he said quietly. But sometimes there is a narrow tide between. A boat can slip if hand and heart are steady. Keep your course by that doubt in your eyes, your grace, and you won't sail the Mad King's wake. Da. She considered, nodded once, and left to ready her dragons. 3 days later, Sansa Stark beheld King's Landing from the saddle of a dapple mare, on the King's Road ridge. The city sprawled below like a wounded lion couched in a nest of its own refuse. The Blackwater glittered sickly. Smoke curled from the ruined chain tower. The Red Keep's crimson banners drooped listless, and between the streets rose faint columns of gray haze. Funeral pyres or plague pits? It was impossible to say. Even at this distance, the air carried a copper tang. Tyrion rode beside her on a rough stepstone's gelding, legs barely reaching the stirrups. "Never thought I'd dread coming home more than my last return," he muttered. "But here we are. Home is where the plague is." Unsullied companies formed silent lines across the ridge, shields overlapping. Brienne dismounted, surveyed the walls through a far eye. "Gatehouses unmanned," she reported. "Portcullis half raised. Either they expect us, or none left to close it." Sansa's throat tightened. She recalled walking those streets as a child, marveling at colorful awnings, listening to singers in the square. Now she smelled only decay. A gust of wind swept from seaward, rushing past the host and scattering helm's plumes. Moments later the wind returned in violent downdraft as Drogon thundered overhead, wings cracking air like siege engines. Daenerys perched atop the black dragon's neck. Behind, Rhaegal and Viserion flew wide arcs to screen. A hush fell across the northern levee. Even battle-hardened Manderly men stared as living myth passed, belly scales dull with soot scars, eyes embers. Daenerys landed on a stony knoll. Sansa rode to meet her. The queen swung down, cheeks flushed, hair whipping. They regarded each other, two women forged by very different fires, yet tempered to equal steel. "Ready?" Daenerys asked. "As I'll ever be," Sansa said. Tyrion cleared throat. "Shall we send terms first?" Sansa shook her head. "Cersei knows every word that might be written. She'll answer only force or leverage." "Then thou." "And what leverage?" Tyrion asked. "Me," Sansa said. "The little bird she caged. I'll walk through the gate, unarmed, under truce." "She'll want to see how I sing now." Daenerys' brows knit. "Too dangerous. If she takes you. She already took me once. That lesson lingers." "He'll parley, if only to sneer. And while she sneers, you position dragons." Tyrion's eyes flicked admiration and worry in equal measure. "Your courage borders folly," he said. "Stark blood," she replied. It was decided. Sansa rode with 2 knights of the Vale, and 1 silent sister bearing white banner. They trotted the final league through deserted outlying farms, where dogs sniffed carrion and children peeked from shutter cracks. Outside the Lion Gate, a pile of corpses smoldered, gray ash drifting like snow. Flies droned. The guards on the parapet did not stir. They were corpses too, propped as decoys against arrow slits. The portcullis stood crooked, chains broken. Sansa dismounted, heart thundering. "Open!" she called, voice echoing. Nothing. She entered, hoof clops behind as her knights followed. The courtyard lay strewn with debris, shutters swinging in burnt air. Far off, a scream rose, cut short. Sansa steeled spine and rode deeper, toward the Street of Sisters. At the sept of Baelor Square she found them. A phalanx of gold-cloaked men ringed by wagons heaped with barrels strapped in iron. Tang of wildfire bit tongue. the stolen caches. Before the wagon stood Qyburn in sable maester's robe, hair white wisps about skull. Beside him loomed Sir Robert Strong, greatsword across breastplate. And between them, draped in crimson, Cersei Lannister. Sansa halted 10 paces distant. The portcullis slammed behind, a trick of hidden chains. Gold cloaks aimed crossbows. Sansa's Vale Knight stiffened but held. Cersei's smile curved slow, predatory. Lady Stark. How the cub has grown claws. Sansa inclined head. Queen Regent, or should I say Lady Lannister. Crown seems scarce today. Cersei's gaze glittered. I keep mine polished, better than that scrap of tin your council flaunts. Qyburn stepped forward, palms raised. Parley terms. Lannister forces withdrawal beyond Blackwater. Your dragons refrain from torching city. In exchange, you may take refugees to your camps under inspection. Her Grace retains Red Keep. Mensan. Sansa laughed softly. Inspection by whom? Your plague whites. She gestured to barrels. You would poison every alley rather than yield. Even wildfire cannot cleanse such madness. Cersei's lips pulled thin. Madness is relinquishing power to butchers and beggars. I restore order through awe. Fear is mercy's older sister, and the stronger. She flicked a hand. Gold cloaks dragged 3 prisoners from a wagon. A gaunt baker, a child, a septa. Faces mottled black lesions, eyes fever-wild. Chains rattled as they struggled, teeth snapping. Sansa swallowed bile. Qyburn unveiled a glass phial. Piling ichor. My gift to the realm, he whispered. A curative. If administered before final stage. Behold the scarcity of mercy. He shattered phial beneath his heel. Green vapors hissed into dust. Rage burned Sansa's cheeks. Release them, she demanded. Cersei chuckled. Their release is coming. In waves. North, south, till the council begs my cure. My maesters alone can stay the tide. She leaned forward, voice silked deadly. But I will share. For a crown returned. Sansa's jaw clenched. The realm already has its crown, in voice of many. Then let it drown in its own voice. Cersei spat and flicked 2 fingers. Gold cloaks, upturned barrels. Rats poured out, thousands of greasy bodies infected by plague. They swarmed across cobbles toward Sansa's party. Squealing. Panic surged in horses. Vale Knights slashed but vermin spilled like water, gnawing at hooves. Sansa's mare reared. She slid back, boots hitting ground. At that instant, a shadow swept overhead. Drogon's roar shook windows. The dragon plunged, flame gouting not upon streets but sky, creating barrier of heat that forced rats to scurry aside in confusion. Stone steamed under furnace breath, rat corpses crisp. Rhaegal circled, his sonic shriek, rattling wagons. Gold cloaks faltered. Cersei staggered, hair whipped. Qyburn's eyes widened. He scuttled to ignite wildfire barrels, but crossbow bolts sprouted through his wrist. Tyrion's shot from parapet he had scaled unseen. Qyburn screamed, dropping flint. Brienne led unsullied charge through gate. Shields locked. They advanced, stamping vermin. Behind them, Grey Worm hurled smoke pots, releasing pungent herbs Sam sworn slowed plagued miasma. Sir Robert Strong lumbered forward to meet assault. Swinging greatsword. Brienne intercepted, Valyrian blade Oathkeeper, parrying his first strike with clang like church bell. Sparks flew. She grunted, legs buckling but held. Gold cloaks pressed. Unsullied met them, spears biting. Sansa drew dagger, cut ropes binding the plague prisoners, then slashed their throats. Quick mercy. She turned to Cersei, meeting eyes across chaos. End this, Sansa pleaded, voice raw. Why? Cersei's face contorted. I will not bow to wolves and dragons. A second roar split air. Viserion swooped, talons grabbing wildfire wagon, hefting it skyward. Barrel burst in midair, green bloom lighting clouds. City folk watching from shutter cracks gasped at the skyfire. Beautiful, terrifying, but safely distant. Tyrion swung down a banner line, landing near Sansa died. He hobbled to his sister. "Cersei? The game is done," she hissed, reached for hidden dagger. Unsullied spear shaft pinned her sleeve to cart. She yanked futile. Tyrion stepped closer, eyes soft. "Don't," he said. Brienne bellowed. A victory roar taut. With a twisting riposte, she severed the mountain's gauntlet, exposing blackened corpse flesh beneath. Oathkeeper cleaved helm in two. The knight's pale head rolled like cracked egg, thick ichor spurting. The behemoth toppled, shaking ground. Gold cloaks broke. Fleeing, Cersei's dagger clattered. She stared at her slain champion, lip trembling, then collapsed to knees. Smoke rose around them, but plague fires had been contained. Sam's herbal blasts masked stench. Daenerys landed beside Drogon. She strode toward Cersei, every inch the Dragon Queen. Yet her eyes held sorrow. "Stand," she commanded. Cersei looked up through soot-streamed face. "Kill me," she whispered. "You've won." Daenerys shook head. "No more queens shall burn today. You will answer before the council. Justice, not vengeance." Cersei laughed, a brittle, breaking sound, then sagged, defeated. By dusk, the streets rang with hammer and bucket, not screams. Unsullied units herded rats into pits burned with dragonfire. Sam's apprentices administered salves of boiled pine resin and ground poppy to infected but living. The plague's cradle had been smashed before it spread. The dead did not rise again beneath sunlight. In the throne room of the Red Keep, a hall stripped now of barbs and melted gold, Cersei knelt, wrists bound in silk cords, before a half-circle of counselors. Sansa and Tyrion flanked. Davos read formal charges. Sister Aelia offered mercy rites. Through broken windows, the crowd beyond chanted, neither lion nor dragon, but a word newly forged: justice, justice. Cersei's verdict would wait, but the war was over. The Red Keep's vaults yielded stores of grain. Qyburn's lab revealed formula for antidote, based ironically on Maester Aemon's journals about dragonflame cautery. Daenerys ordered its duplication across every major septitae. That night Jon Snow arrived with relief wagons. He found Sansa on the ramparts overlooking Blackwater, hair unbound, tears shining. "Father would have been proud," he said. "He would have wept." She answered, "To see how many hearts were lost before we found ours again." Jon set calloused hand on hers. "We'll lose more, gain more. But tonight, let this breathe." Then done. Behind them, fireworks of Valyrian glass dust launched from ships. Sam's suggestion to cleanse air sparkled crimson and sapphire, mirrored on moonlit water. Weeks rolled into summer's first blush. King's Landing became laboratory of new governance. Tradesmen elected spokeswomen to voice markets' needs. Septons debated scripture of mercy with red priests. Dornish envoys set up wine stalls. No one pretended harmony. A pickpocket brawl might erupt near Street of Flower, a maester duel with ink and invective in the Citadel columns. But the old terror had ebbed. Tyrion oversaw reconstruction of the Dragon Pit into an amphitheater for council conclaves, and, on feast days, public storytelling. He claimed stories were the cheapest mortar for holding kingdoms. Daenerys spent mornings at the healing tents, afternoons airborne surveying irrigation ditches chiseled by freedfolk along the Roserod. At dusk, she practiced Valyrian calligraphy with Shireen Baratheon, whose gentle correction brightened the queen's laugh. Jon returned north to supervise resettlement of free folk villages. Bran Stark arrived by litter borne on Giant's back. His eyes far-seeing, approved silent timberwork raised around heart trees planted southward, roots bridging old magic with new soil. On Storm's End's ramparts, Stannis watched swallows dart, a soft smile tugging seldom-used muscles. Davos delivered news of the capital. Cersei, stripped of name save Lannister, to labor in the Silent Sisters' causes tending plague graves. Qyburn sent to Citadel's cellar archives, barred from tools sharper than quill. The gold cloaks reorganized under mixed officers chosen by lot and merit. Justice rings, Stannis mused, but must be reforged each dawn. Aye, Davos agreed. We've taught the forge to many hands. Let's hope they remember the heat. Far across the narrow sea, in the marble halls of Volantis, triarchs read accounts of these changes and shifted on cushioned thrones. Bankers tallied ledgers, trying to reckon profit in a realm where crowns bowed to councils and dragons protected common charters. On the stepstones, sell-sail captains grumbled that honest tariffs bit harder than war plunder. In Pentos, a prince with no kingdom toasted the bartered age, longing secretly for simpler chaos. Yet among fisher children along the narrow seas, Stony Cove's stories drifted like gull feathers. Of a wolf queen who faced lions unarmed, and a dragon queen who burned plague but spared people. Of a one-handed imp who anchored dragons by wit. Of a free folk giant who carried a prince of ravens to regrow hearts of trees. They told tales of Sansa's quiet dagger mercy, Brienne's duel with a dead mountain, Davos' arrow felling a kraken god. Some stories stretched, some shrank, but all threaded one refrain. There had been a choice, and the living chose each other. The first anniversary of the Pact of Two Thrones dawned clear and gold. In the Dragon Pit Amphitheater, a crowd gathered. Sailors in patched cloaks beside maids in embroidered silks, maesters in gray, smiths in soot, Dornish archers, iron-born traders, Summer Island singers, wildling hunters. Voices melded into a hum of expectation. At noon, Tyrion appeared on dais, striking a small bell. Lords and ladies, small folk and grand folk, the Council of Voices opens its first charter day. He stepped aside. Jon Snow, dressed in plain wool, spoke of winter's memory and the wall of unity grown in its wake. Sansa recited names lost to plague and war, leading a moment's silence so profound even the dragons on the hill paused their low conversation. Then Daenerys took the stone steps. She looked neither queen nor conqueror, but a woman who had walked through flame and still bore light in her eyes. She addressed the assembly. Each of us was born beneath banners stitched long before we drew breath. We lived by their rules, whether they fed us or devoured us. We have unstitched and restitched much these past seasons, and threads may fray again. But cloth is nothing without hands to weave it. You are those hands. Today, this pit once used to cage dragons becomes a cradle for every voice. Guard it as you would guard your children because it is you guard. A murmur rippled through audience, soft and warm. She raised one hand. Let the bells of King's Landing ring not for victory, but for vigilance. Let every feast remind us we once starved separately until we feasted together. And so the bells rang, pealing across lanes where bakers set out honey cakes shaped like wolves and dragons twined. Across the harbor where fishermen dyed sails crimson and snow. Up the King's Road where refugees still trickled home to find doors open. They rang up the coasts to White Harbor, to Sunspear's sun-baked walls, to lonely Skagos where seal hunters lifted cups of sour goat milk and nodded. They reached even the Frostfang ridges, where a red woman knelt before a cave mouth, feeling the bells tremble through earth beneath her palms. She smiled, a secret, wistful curve, and whispered a prayer to a god of light for a realm learning to kindle its own. In the dusk following Charter Day, fireworks startled the city. Brilliant bursts of sapphire and rose, gold crackles shaped like tiny dragons chasing wolves across the firmament. Children shrieked delight, elders wept, remembering darker skies. Daenerys watched from a balcony of the Tower of Hand. Now the House of Voices. Jon beside her, Sansa leaning against stone balustrade. Tyrion wandered with wineskin, offering toasts to everyone and no one. Do you ever fear the dragons will outgrow us? Jon asked quietly. Daenerys followed her gaze to Drogon, stretched on the hill of Rhaenys, tail flicking embers at the sky. They will in time, she answered. But outgrowing is not abandoning. It is trust in what we've built underneath their wings. Sansa smiled. Starlings leave the nest because the nest does its work well. Below, crowd voices lifted in a folk ballad dawning that very night. no doubt to warp by morning into bawdy tavern tune. But tonight it sounded pure. It told of choosing justice over crowns, of burning plague but keeping hope, of talking beasts of fire into guardians. As it rose, the dragons unfurled wings and launched, each taking position in sky's tapestry, black, green, and gold, swerving around each other like threads on invisible loom. Their silhouettes blotted the rising half-moon, yet in that shadow, nothing felt lost. Rather, the night seemed to gain shape, as if even darkness had learned its place in the pattern. On the balcony, the three leaders stood without speaking, letting the city's new heartbeat thrum through bone. For somewhere in the hush between the fireworks' last echo and the dragon's next roar, they heard it. A tide's hush on distant shores, the low murmur of markets yet unbuilt, laughter of children yet unborn, the sound of tomorrow choosing its first breath. And they understood that rule would never again be steel pressed on throats or fire rained from heights. Rule would be the hard, daily work of listening, of arguing without killing, of forging many into one without breaking the many. It would be imperfect. It would be exhausting. But it would be theirs. Mist curled along the black water like breath upon a glass pane, turning the palisades of King's Landing into gray silhouettes just after the midsummer moon. In the streets below the hill of Rainey's, torches guttered in front of shuttered wine shops, and a dog barked once, then fell silent, as if even mongrels feared to fracture the hush. The city, newly christened Queen of Charters by visiting mummers, slept uneasy despite the bells that had tolled all afternoon in celebration. Peace was no longer a dream. Peace had become the fabric of daily life. And men who had worn tatters of war around their shoulders did not yet know how to sleep without its weight. In the Tower of the Hand, Daenerys Targaryen, still queen to some, counselor to most, stood in a candlelit map room, tracing the embattled coastline of Westeros with a fingertip. The parchment smelled of fresh ink and rose oil, a gift from Sansa Stark, who insisted that anointing boundaries with blossoms rather than blood would remind scribes why those borders mattered. Outside the narrow windows, the dragons were absent for the first time since Charter Day, having followed an evening thermal out across the black water, until their silhouettes dissolved into the moon's bright path. For a moment, Daenerys had felt them in her mind. A single upstroke of 3 colossal wings, an exultant shriek that rattled her bones. Then the tether slackened. Freedom, Drogon had seemed to say. And trust. She folded the map and pushed it aside. A light knock sounded at the door, and Jon Snow entered in his traveling cloak, smelling of pine and long road. A swath of starlight fell across his face, accentuating the half-healed scar above his right brow. An arrow grazed from the riot she had quelled with nothing but dragon shadow. He greeted her with a grave nod before tossing a satchel onto the long table. "Scrolls from White Harbor," he said. "And a gift from the Watch. Smoked goat, rare as rubies these days." Daenerys lifted the oilskin bundle, inhaling salted meat and spruce. "The Watch does not send such gifts lightly." "Not gifts," Jon corrected. "Tithes. The small folk on the gift's new holdings sent loaves and barley. Giants carved more timber than Castle Black can mill. I'm merely the courier." She smiled, weary yet warm. "A courier who wears more titles than an archmaester." He shrugged. "Titles weigh less than promises. I thought you'd prefer what can be eaten." She gestured to the chair opposite and poured small beer from a pitcher. They sat. For a while they spoke of simple things. River traffic on the Mander, Dornish vintners shipping casks upriver under the new toll exemptions, how Brienne had ended another brawl in Flea Bottom by tossing both combatants bodily into the honey wine. Yet beneath such talk, Daenerys sensed Jon's tension. His shoulders never left that faint battle set. She waited until pause yawned wide enough. "What troubles the North tonight?" she asked. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped. "Bran's ravens bring strange news. Fishermen along Skagos and the Broken Arm claim to have seen lights in the sky, green fires, spirals of flame that do not burn wood or flesh, but leave nets humming with some resonance, a shiver, they say, in the bones of the sea." Her mind jumped to the glass candles in the citadel, to Qyburn's plague fires, to the shattered horn Euron had used. Is it the old magic stirring again? Bran feels something. Not the others, not shadows of the last war, but a pulse. He asks the council to send trusted eyes. Daenerys rose, pacing between bookcases. If it were only lights, I'd send a maester. Yet Skagos is as far from Old Town's peace as Asshai is from Valyria. We can't neglect it. And we can't appear to impose again. Jon's expression tightened. The northern clans accepted the council because it kept the wall garrisoned and their lands theirs. If we march a host into Skagos, old wounds reopen. I'll go, he added. With Tormund, a handful of black brothers, and perhaps one dragon for watch. She halted at the hearth. I'd prefer 2, Drogon at least. Jon shook his head. Too many towns still tremble at shadows in the sky. 1 dragon, high watch, is caution. 2 is invasion. Daenerys studied him, seeing the boy lord who had died and been reborn as man shaped by vows. I will not forbid, she said. Drogon can cross that strait in half an hour if we call. Take Rhaegal, he minds your voice. Jon stood. I leave at dawn. He started for the door, then hesitated, turning back. Candle flame flickered across his cutter's cheekbones. In that wavering light, his eyes held both the Winterfell godswood and the deserts of Meereen, the ghost of the wall and the echo of dragonfire. If these lights prove harmless, he murmured, then perhaps they are only the world healing itself, like new blood rushing beneath a scar. She crossed to him, laid hand on his chest where heart beat steady. Scars remind flesh that it lived. We will learn what the new blood carries. He dipped his head, soft kiss upon her brow. Then he was gone, cloak swallowing the corridor. Left alone, Daenerys faced the map again. Healing, yes. But healing could itch, could reopen, could fester. She traced the place where Skagos jutted like a shark's tooth. If old magic splintered there, they must quarantine quickly. A log cracked in the hearth. A spark leapt. She caught herself whispering Valyrian, calling Drogon back across the night, though he was leagues away. Mother or tyrant. Every breath she chose anew. Tonight, she chose vigilance. At dawn, Jon departed through the Lion Gate with a column of 200. 50 Night's Watch Rangers, 30 spearwives under Ali's Karstark, 20 giants striding like moving oak trunks, and a miscellany of archers smattered from Bear Island to Barrowton. Rhaegal lofted above, wings emerald in first light. The small folk lining the road cheered or made signs of warding, but none hurled stones. Progress, Jon mused. Tormund rode at his side upon a shaggy Garan smelling of peat. Been too long since I cracked a skull, the big man grumbled cheerfully. If these skyfires birth monsters, I want first swing. I hope you're bored, Jon replied. I never am around you, Crow. They reached the ford where the Trident's northernmost fork met the sea. Nights grew colder, gulls shrieked, swooping near Rhaegal until one misjudged downdraft and vanished in green flame. Jon winced. Tormund laughed. Even dragons need breakfast. By the 5th day, they entered the Wolf's Mouth Strait. Fog curled like breath from the water's black surface. Sailors of the longship Frostmaiden muttered of mermaids that sang men overboard. Giants huffed disdain, though they shivered under sealskin. Jon stood on prow, scanning horizon. At sunset, the lights appeared, swirling gyres of jade and violet, not in the sky but rippling upon wave crests. Silent, mesmerizing. Flecks spattered hull, each droplet sizzling then fading. The deck planks thrummed, as though strings beneath foot. 7, save us, muttered Corin's nephew Con, fingering black cloak. I. Jon lifted spyglass. No embers drifted from burning wreck. Nothing burned. The glow came from the sea itself. He had seen frozen lakes shine blue under moonlight, but never this living radiance. He signaled Rhaegal. The dragon banked, circled, then landed on a rocky islet mid-channel. For an hour Jon watched waters shiver. No wights, no tentacled demons, only a low hum echoing in bones. At last Tormund approached. "If the earth wants to sing, let it. We'll sleep and greet Skagos on the morrow." Sleep proved fitful. Dreams of green spirals pulling him underwater, of voices chanting in a tongue older than giants. He woke at false dawn to distant horn blasts, deep, mournful, from Skagos shore. Rhaegal roared response. Jon roused camp. They rowed ashore, under salmon-red sunrise. The beach was strewn with pale stone eggs as large as pumpkins. Not eggs, he saw, but shells, barnacle-encrusted fragments of something vast. Beyond lay a field of trumpets crafted of driftwood and whalebone, spiraling upward from the sand like eerie sculptures. At their bases huddled clansfolk in furs, playing the horns with solemn faces, each note resonating into sea and air, weaving with the water's hum. Jon dismounted in peace posture, helm unstrapped. An elder with braided beard approached, leaning on walrus ivory. "You bring the Dawn's rider," he said, gesturing to Rhaegal perched high above. "Good. The Sea Sisters wish to speak with Fire's cousin." Jon inclined his head. "I am Jon Snow. We come because the light's frightened fishermen." The elder smiled, deepening creases around eyes. "The lights are the sea's remembering. Long years frozen under the other's dread, she forgot her own voice. Now she sings to waken stone eggs, old dragon kin that sleep beneath tideless rifts." "Nenderal. Dragon kin?" Jon repeated. Behind him Tormund swore. The elder led them across tidal flats, where fissures vented gentle steam. In one, Jon glimpsed scales the size of roof tiles, dull gray, but pulsing faint glimmers. Not dragons, more serpentine. Serpents of the deep, perhaps with wings like manta fins. The hum resonated from them. Slow heartbeats. "We call them marrowworms," the elder said. "They slumbered since the long night's first scream. Now warmth returns. But they stir confused. If they breach without guide, they may churn storms that swallow coasts." "Dah." Jon exhaled white plume. "You want the dragons to guide them." "Fire knows fire," the elder said simply. Jon weighed. If serpents awoke unguided, maritime trade could vanish. Storms could swamp the neck. But sending dragons to sea risked losing their guardianship of the sky. "I will send word," he said. "But they must sleep a while longer." He studied the horns. "Your music, it soothes them." "We learned in dream," the elder said. "We will keep singing, but singers grow few." Jon offered healers, food, cloth. Then he penned 2 ravens, one to Daenerys, one to the council. Rhaegal bore them over mist. Until reply came, they would help strengthen horn choirs, track shell fields, map fissures. That night Jon stood beside a steaming crevasse as Aurora bled green ribbons overhead, reflected in Rhaegal's eyes. "World grows wider," he murmured, "and more fragile." In King's Landing, Daenerys gathered the council. Sam's mouth fell open at the notion of mereworms. Valen whispered of leviathans in ash-eye scrolls. Tyrion quipped that the realm barely balanced one set of wings, let alone a school of sea dragons. Yet the charter required they consider. Mary the cobbler pointed out that Valyrian fishing fleets depended on calm seas. Sister Aelia prayed for wisdom. Sansa proposed dispatching a delegation of maesters trained in natural philosophy, accompanied by ironborn shipwrights under Yara Greyjoy, who had pledged her axes to rebuilding rather than writing. If mereworms rose, who better to shepherd than women who knew both storm and sail? Daenerys agreed. She would fly Drogon to Skagos, with healers and scribes. Rhaegal would remain with Jon. Viserion patrolled the narrow sea. Before departure, she visited Stannis at Storm's End. The old king stood atop Sea Dragon Tower, wind salty and blue-black beard now streaked white. She explained the marrowworm stir. Stannis listened, expression granite. 8 wars and I thought peace would be a wall, he said slowly. Now I see it as a ship, always building, always caulking, or it sinks. Go then, mend your seams. Now, He gripped her wrist, an odd gesture for the taciturn Baratheon. But recall, justice, not mercy, steadies the keel. If those beasts threaten, do what must be done. She nodded, though the words weighed stark. On the 15th day, after Jon's raven, Daenerys soared above Skagos. Snow still ribboned cliffs, but summer melt revealed mossy terraces and bright waterfalls plummeting into turquoise pools. She landed near Jon's camp, greeted him with clasped hands rather than titles. That evening they walked among hornblowers, feeling the ground's subtle tremor. Drogon peered into fissures, emitted low rumbles that harmonized. The sea calmed. At dawn, Daenerys descended a narrow shaft into the rifts, guided by rope and lantern. Jon followed. They emerged onto a shelf above an underground sea, where faint phosphorescence lit colossal shapes. Serpent drakes coiled around basalt pillars, their spined ridges rising like mountain ranges. One eye opened, a disk of molten gold bigger than a wagon wheel. Yet it watched with sluggish curiosity, not hunger. Daenerys knelt, set palm to scale warm as banked embers. Nuhor, she whispered. The Valyrian for peace. Drogon's croon echoed through stone. The mereworm's eyes shuttered. Water sighed. Slowly she understood. They were not yet ready to rise. They yearned for lullabies after nightmare. She would give them lullabies. Horn choirs groaned to hundreds, each note married with dragon thrums. In time, when seas cleared of wartime wreckage, when ports prepared, the serpents might surface gentle, shepherded by dragonkind to deeper currents. But first, the realm must know patience. Months spiraled. In Old Town's shipyards, Yara Greyjoy oversaw construction of Leviathan escorts. Hulls plated with bronze, harpoons replaced by nets of braided hemp meant to guide, not kill. In White Harbor, Manderley engineers built floating signal beacons tuned to the Skagos horns. Sansa corresponded with Lady Lyanna Mormont, who recruited orphans eager to become sky listeners, traveling south to learn acoustics. The faith militant attempted one last rising, branding mereworms abominations. But Brienne broke their barricade in the Sept's rubble, as Sister Aelia preached that gods built wonders beyond men's narrow lenses. Tyrion, ever the juggler, levied modest tariffs on Myrish lens grinders to fund the harbor beacons, quipping, "If we must stare at monsters, let's at least profit on spectacles." Jon, dividing time between Wall and Skagos, forged brotherhood oaths between free folk spearwives and watch rangers, both sworn to keep shorelines clear of poachers who sought mereworm scales for profit. In autumn, Bran Stark ventured in raven form to Skagos, circling vents. Through him, the council heard echoes of songs older than children of the forest, songs of water and fire dancing before the first heartbreak of ice. Bran called them promise songs. And always, dragons wheeled overhead, guardians and students alike. Drogon's shadow no longer terrified fishermen. It signaled sunrise nets might brim. Rhaegal taught hatchling eagle how to ride his tailwind. Viserion dove in the narrow sea, startling whales but leaving them untouched, perhaps sharing secrets of deep breathing. On a clear winter's eve 1 year later, the council convened again in the dragon pit. Jon and Daenerys stood side by side before a crowd twice that of Charter Day, representatives from Ibn, from the Summer Isles, even wary Carthene traders drawn by stories of a realm that brokered, not burned. They announced the Mereworm Accord. Westerosi ports would ready sanctuaries. Free cities could lay keel rent-free if they trained signal crews. No harpoons, no chained pens, only observation and study. The hall erupted in murmurs, awe mixed with commerce dreams. Then Sansa stepped forward, raising a small oaken box. From it, she withdrew the circlet of intertwined 7 points, the crown of voices, and held it high. For a year we have worn no single crown. she said. "Today I propose we melt this circlet into 7 equal links and add them to the great chain of the citadel. Wisdom, drawn from rule, forged into learning." Silence followed. Stunned. Tyrion grinned. Sam gasped. Sister Aelia crossed herself and smiled. Stannis, in gallery, rose. Seconded. Daenerys turned, placed hand atop the circlet. "Let the realm echo the lesson. Power, once surrendered, can nourish more than it ever ruled." With forge brought into the pit, the crown melted to glowing droplets, poured onto an iron slab where maesters hammered 7 links. When they cooled, Vaelin lifted them, new chain clinking like bells of knowledge. The crowd cheered, a tide washing stone. That night, fireworks painted the sky again. Green for ship beacons, blue for northern lights, red gold dragons chasing silver wolves. On the hill of Rhaenys, the dragons answered with roars that shook marble, but no hearts. In the quiet after, Jon and Daenerys walked along the city wall above the glowing lamps. Snowflakes drifted. First kiss of winter's return. "Will the world ever cease to test us?" Jon asked softly. "Not while it breathes," she said. "But each trial now meets many hands, not 2 alone." She extended her hand. He took it. Far below, laughter rose from taverns where victorious fleets of story sailors toasted mereworms they had not yet seen. Across narrow lanes, orphans practiced horn notes on reed pipes. And overhead the dragons spiraled once around the half-moon, then glided north, escorting the promise of songs older than despair. Jon squeezed her fingers. "Come spring, we'll hear them." "Come spring," Daenerys echoed. They watched their guardians vanish into the starlit dark, trusting the night, and each other, to keep shaping dawn. All ka. D. Moonless dark spread like spilled ink across the narrow sea, and Drogon's shadow rippled over it in silence. Only the slow lash of his tail sending rings across black water. Daenerys Targaryen rode just behind the ridge of his skull, her cheeks stung by the chill, her mind drifting to the low hum that had grown familiar on every flight these past weeks. It was the mereworm's deep-water chorus. Not quite song, not quite roar, but a vibration that seemed to quiver up through the dragon's breastbone and into her own lungs until her breath matched its pulse. Below, lantern lights winked atop half-finished bronze-plated hulls, moored to floating scaffolds. Yara's Leviathan escort fleet taking shape beneath midnight torches. Sparks showered metal, hissed out on the water, and the world smelled of hammered copper and brine and new beginnings. They had circled Skagos twice, bringing fresh scrolls of horn scores and star maps copied from Bran's visions. The coast was calmer now. When the mereworms stirred, they did so slowly, as though listening to the gradual cadence that Drogon and Rhaegal and Viserion stitched with the islanders' bone trumpets. The waking ones rose only far enough to nudge snow-slumped icebergs, pushing them gently south along a corridor Jones Rangers, now called the Serpent Path. The bergs melted as they drifted, releasing stores of ancient minerals into the Gulf of Grief. Fisher hulls had already fattened. Still, it would be years before the first Leviathan breached in full daylight. Years more, perhaps, before any foreign captain believed such creatures truly meant no harm. Years. Daenerys had learned to respect years. She angled Drogon's flight south-southwest toward Dragonstone, where the council had sequestered for winter recess. A stiff tailwind carried them swiftly. Within an hour, the night thickened into the faint gray of pre-dawn, and the sea below brightened with phosphorescent shoals. Drogon banked, pillars of hot air ghosting beneath his wings, and the basalt towers of the old fortress rose jagged on their headland. Rhaegal crouched atop the broken dragon statue outside the main gate, waiting, green eyes reflecting torchlight. In the courtyard, unsullied night sentries parted ranks, spears tilted in salute. As Drogon settled, his talons cracked frost on the flagstones. Daenerys dismounted, dropping to the stones with practiced ease. The chill bit harder here than at King's Landing, a salt knife wind sluicing down the tower spine. She pulled her cloak tight and strode through the gate arch. Inside the hall, Tyrion Lannister was roosted on a keg of Black Label mead, fingers stained from the charcoal sketches he had spent the evening perfecting. Battle lines of dialogue for the playhouse troupe that now toured small holds, preaching the Merweir MacCord in bawdy verse. He glanced up as Daenerys entered, then raised a finger for silence, and finished a sentence on the parchment. Finally, he blew on the ink and rolled the sheet. "Back already," he said. "I'd hoped for at least another dawn of peace before the next storm." "No storm," Daenerys replied, unlatching her gloves. "The sea sings but softly, and we have cause to convene. There's a letter from Korth. Karth never writes except to boast or threaten. Which, this time?" "Both," she said. They moved to the council chamber, a narrow room with one long slit window looking down upon the stone stair that wound to the sea. A brazier burned low. Sansa Stark and Samwell Tarly were already inside, poring over a crate of Simeon Star Eyes' disputed journals that Maester Valen had released for copying. Sansa looked up first, eyes bright beneath a shawl of white fox pulled over red hair. "You felt it," she guessed. "The sea pulse again?" "Jon sent a bird at dusk that it was deepening." "Deepening, yes," Daenerys said, but lifted the Carthene cylinder. "Yet this may prove deeper still." "Sam?" "Then?" Sam unfolded the parchment, careful not to smudge the rich indigo ink and wax-pressed glyphs. "To the Forged Council of Westeros, greetings from Zaro Joan Daxos, Triarch of the 13. Sam read all, then cleared his throat. "He congratulates us on taming the oceans, dragons, and laments that such marvels draw undesirable interest from certain powers east of the Red Waste. He requests, no, he demands, an envoy to make formal assurances that none of the Mereworms will pass the Jade Gates without Korth's sanction, or there will be swift silken retribution." "Ah!" Tyrion barked a short laugh. "Silken retribution. Sounds softer than the last plague ships they sent our way." Sansa exhaled, steadying herself against the oak table. "The ink guilds of Korth have longer memories than crows, and fewer scruples than kraken. They believe the world theirs to measure." Daenerys passed fingers over the warmed stone rim of the brazier. "I will send an envoy, but not in chain or saddle. The time has come for a person Korth mistrusts yet respects." Sansa tilted her head. "You mean to go yourself?" "No." Daenerys let the single word settle. "I mean to send Tyrion." The dwarf arched a pale brow. "May? The last time I saw Korth, I nearly drowned in a cistern and bribed a shipping consortium with promises of dragons you didn't own yet." "Exactly." Her smile was small. "They believed you then. They will believe you now. But with clearer terms and 20 years more scars. And you can remind them that merchant princes prosper more under agreements than ultimata. You will take 3 scholars, 2 scribes, and no weapons save the truth." "Menmichel." Tyrion rolled his shoulders as if shrugging on a new cloak. "I'll need a fast ship and a faster tongue." He turned to Sansa. "Care to accompany? A diplomatic honeymoon? I hear Korth's perfumeries can cloak any stench, even politics." Sansa's mouth quirked, the ghost of their unconsummated marriage hovering like a mischievous sprite between them. "I'd sooner winter in Skagos, but I'll lend you Brienne." "Your Lady Knight terrifies Korth," Tyrion mused. "Perfect." Sam closed the scroll. "I should remain here cataloging the sea pulse. The Citadel's glass candle glows brightest when the mereworms stir. We need fresh translations of the Pale Dreamer's tablets." Daenerys nodded. "Then our course is set. Tyrion leaves with first tide. Sam, continue your watch. Sansa, convene ironmakers. Those escort hulls need their plating before spring swells." She exhaled. "I will fly north tomorrow. If the pulse truly deepens, we must shape the lullaby horns to match. Jon requested more obsidian mouthpieces. I'll carry a satchel." She turned to go, but Sansa's hand caught her sleeve. "Do you ever wish," Sansa asked softly, "that the world would stop asking?" Daenerys paused, considering torch flickers on stone. "I used to when requests were chains. Now they are bridges. They tire me, but I'd never trade them for the emptiness of a throne room echoing with fear." Sansa released her sleeve. "Then may we remain bridge builders." Tyrion lifted his mead. To bridges, and the fools who cross them first. Across the narrow sea, the city of Qarth glimmered behind its triple-layered gates, each ring a story told in gem-bright mosaic. Above the outer wall's curve, fronds waved slowly in the hot desert wind, and distant bell chimes mingled with the bellow of spice beasts in corrals. Yet inside the hall of 1,000 thrones, the mood was brittle. Xaro de Xoan Daxos reclined on his carnelian dais, fingers plucking soundless chords on an ivory harp. At intervals he glanced toward the moon-door balcony where the red sky bled into violet. Proof that another day had passed without answer from the west. He was not alone. Pyat Pri hovered nearby, robes shimmering with illusionary depth. The warlock's azure lips curled. You lean on parchment, I lean on prophecy. The tide of old fires rises. Do you imagine a dwarf, and a nidus could quell it? When the tide rises, Xaro murmured. One builds higher piers. Pyat's eyes gleamed like chips of winter ice. Or he will return with dragon escort, and your piers will prove driftwood. A slow shrug. Then we bargain with driftwood. Even driftwood can float a kingdom if sufficiently lacquered. Then so. He looked past the warlock to where 3 silent sisters of Qarth, their faces bound in silk, arranged hourglasses on an inlaid table. Each hourglass contained a different sand. Black basalt, pale jade shards, shimmering ruby dust. When the ruby glass emptied, Xaro would send a faster bird to Astapor, calling for sell sales. If the jade glass emptied, he'd dispatch ambassadors to Yi Ti, begging for star steel. The black basalt glass he hoped never to see half full. It represented the time left before fire leviathans might sunder the jade gates themselves. A fortnight later, the cog Laughing Lion slipped into Qarth's port under quilted sails, bearing no heraldry. Tyrion Lannister stood at prow beside Brienne, blinking sweat from lashes. He had not set foot here since a desperate flight from Volantis in his youth, yet the scent, cardamom, sun-baked marble, brine, spun memories like cobweb. Beside him, Brienne scowled at dockworkers, maneuvering gangplanks with too casual clatter. Remember, Tyrion told her, in Qarth courtesy is armor. They will call us curiosities to our faces. We must grin like mummer masks. Brienne fingered the hilt of Oathkeeper. Armor I trust. Courtesy rusts. Down the plank they went, Tyrion leaning on his cane, Brienne towering at his flank. The 3 scholars, a Summer Island poet, a Lysine cartographer, and a Myrish metallurgist, followed carrying scroll cases. No guards besides Brienne. The show of trust was calculated. Xaro greeted them in the perfumed gardens, wearing a robe of turquoised feathers. He bowed with practiced grace. You bear no banners. A wise choice. Tyrion matched the bow. We bear conversation, the lightest standard. So began the dance. Over goblets of amethystine wine they recounted the Merwerm Accord, emphasized mutual trade opportunities, and highlighted that leviathans guided by dragons could draw lucrative pilgrim fleets eager to witness miracles. Xaro nodded, stroked chin, admired prospects. Yet his counters were sly. Tariffs on sea paths, ceremonial tribute of Merwerm scales, a Qarthine observer on every escort ship. Tyrion parried with jokes about overweight tariff clerks sinking skiffs, about scales molting unpredictably. You might receive a scrap one year, a tidal wave the next. When the Triarch demanded Qarth be named sole curator of Leviathan lore, Brienne's hand tightened on her sword. Tyrion raised a placating palm. Curatorship implies ownership. A beast born of nature remains free. But we can co-author a codex. Knowledge shared is profit multiplied. Negotiations spiraled until lanterns guttered. At dawn they adjourned with a skeletal draft. Tyrion knew Xaro would attempt amendment through subtle threat. Indeed, as they departed the garden, Pyat Pri scented their path like an ice-cold ripple. Beware deep water, little lion. Some songs do not wish to be cages. Back aboard the Laughing Lion, Brienne settled across from Tyrion at the captain's mess. Warlocks don't appreciate jokes, she said. They appreciate fear, Tyrion replied. So we keep giving them confidence instead. It confounds them. Brienne frowned. Confidence feels thin. It does. He poured water. But thin ice sometimes holds, provided everyone steps lightly, and no one tests the weight alone. While Karth's parchments inked, Daenerys flew a circuit of the northern beacons. The world below gleamed white, yet pockets of thaw carved river veins through fields of hoarfrost. At Deepwood Motte, Lady Asha Greyjoy, now styling herself Captain Regent, saluted Daenerys passing with green smoke rockets. At Winterfell, Bran Stark stood in the Godswood moss, eyes white in vision trance, ravens perched like a living cloak across his shoulders. Snow swirled, and Daenerys landed beside the heart tree, listening to Bran speak not with voice, but with the slow shifting of the weirwood's face in the torch glow. "The tide of dream runs higher," Bran said through cracked lips. "I see stone eggs softening. I see silver rivers running uphill. The world remembers shapes forgotten. We shape them back by choosing which memories to keep." Daenerys pressed her palm to the carved trunk. "Will the shapes break us?" Bran's eyelids fluttered. "Not if we remain fluid," he murmured. "Ice that will not bend must fracture." She left Winterfell thoughtful, Drogon's wingbeats rhythmic against the hush. Southward she flew to Moat Cailin, where the marshland had become a living laboratory. Floating reed barges fitted with acoustic pillars, ready to replicate Skago's horn choirs along every migratory path. Crannogman engineers offered Daenerys a carved reed flute tuned to mereworm frequencies. She played one tremulous note, and water lilies folded, as though bowing. At last she returned to Dragonstone, expecting letters from Qarth. Instead, she found Jon Snow waiting in the courtyard with eyes stark as the day that'd burned the plague. He held 2 obsidian mouthpieces snapped in half. "The pulse spiked," he said. "The mereworms are restless. Our horn corrals stalled them, but Rhaegal sensed fear. Not anger. Fear." She took the shards. "Of what?" "Something beneath. Bran dreams of black water boiling. He travels further each night, but wakes shaken." Daenerys glanced east, where dawn's red band rimmed the sea. "We must descend again." Together they planned. A fleet of shallow draft lantern barges ringed the Skagos rifts, Rhaegal hovering overhead, Drogon ready to strike fire if waters boiled. Giants hauled resonance drums onto ice floes. Hornblowers stood in half-circle ranks upon cliff edges. Scores clutched, waiting for Bran's command. The young Greenseer arrived borne by a patient mammoth. His eyes were tired hollows but resolute. Beside him strode Lady Lyanna Mormont in seal hide, a slim horn of dragonglass slung at her side. "The worms heard something older than themselves," Bran said as snow sifted. "An echo under the tectonic shelf. We must descend where no rope harness will hold. Someone of both fire and flesh must go." His gaze rested on Daenerys. She swallowed. "Into the Fisher Lake." He nodded. "I will ward the nearest mereworm to keep the waters calm. But to speak to what lies beneath, you must bring Drogon's light down." Jon stepped forward. "Then I descend with her." Bran shook his head. "Too much ice in your veins. The heat would kill. Her blood has danced with fire." "Bell." Jon looked at Daenerys, worry etched deep, but he clasped her arm. "Then I wait with Rhaegal. If anything rises, we hold them." Preparations moved like dream. They fitted Drogon's neck with thickened leather harnesses lined in lead sheets to shield Daenerys from volcanic vent heat. Giant woven nets secured vials of luminescent lichen to the saddle. Maesters coated her garments in alchemical cooling salve. When all stood ready, Bran lifted gnarled staff. Horn choirs sounded, 30 deep voices merging with 30 light voices, layering into vibration that rippled frost from the cliffs. Water within the vent parted, swirling into luminous whirl. Drogon swooped, plunged. Darkness swallowed them. Then a bluish glow bloomed, light seeping from cracks in the rock-like veins of moonstone. Daenerys clung, breath misting inside helm visor. Around them coiled the sleeping worms, larger than memory, girths brushing stalactites. Beyond the inner ring of serpents lay a chasm, its heart unfathomable. Drogon folded wings and drifted down, heat building. She felt sweat pool at her back despite salve. At a ledge broad enough for dragon, they landed. Greenish pools steamed at the rim. Daenerys dismounted, legs trembling. She uncorked a lichen flask, splashing faint lantern light across columns that soared like cathedral pillars. There, at the precipice, she saw it. A door. No, not a door. An imprint upon stone, rectangular, edges unnaturally straight for a cave. Bas-relief glyphs covered it, unlike any Valyrian swirl or Giscari knot. They resembled concentric spirals broken at angles. A tremor passed. The stone seemed to exhale. She stepped closer. Her breath formed words unbidden, ancient Valyrian syllables she had never learned. Synost, Arvosa, Synoste. The door pulsed faint violet. Drogon rumbled. Above, Bran's distant voice inside her mind. Ask it why it woke. Daenerys laid palm on stone. Cold, though air blistered heat. She whispered, Why do you stir? Silence. Then a radiating pang of sorrow, as if the stone itself mourned. Images flooded her inner eye. A younger world, seas boiling under two moons, scaled leviathans, diving through skywater, screaming comets, splitting heavens. In that maelstrom, beings of light and night forged a covenant. Sea would cradle fire's children so long as fire remembered sea's name. Time smeared, and she saw dragons hatch, volcanoes birth tongues of magma, and finally the long night freezing breath, sealing deep hearts behind crust. The covenant forgotten as men warred. The sorrow returned, and beneath it, question. Do you remember? She understood. An ancient promise frayed. The mereworms stirred because the deep stone feared abandonment. If they rose uncontrolled, they would reclaim covenant by force. I remember now, she said aloud. And I will keep the name. The stone warmed beneath her palm. Glyphs shimmered, receded. Water in the chasm calmed to mirror stillness. Drogon relaxed, exhaling steam. Above, the horn choirs grew softer, notes shifting to a gentle lullaby. Daenerys backed away. As she mounted Drogon, a single crystal spalled from the door. Transparent, tapered like a dragon claw. She caught it in her gauntlet. It weighed almost nothing yet hummed with quiet energy. They ascended, breaking the surface as dusk painted the world lilac. Jon flew to meet them on Rhaegal, worry melting into relief when she raised a gloved thumb. On the cliffs, Bran smiled faintly. The promise is heard. He lifted one shaking finger toward the crystal. Key and covenant both. Keep it in daylight until the mereworms breach. They will know it, and remember gentleness. Lyanna blew the dragonglass horn. Its notes soared high and bright. Giants cheered, slapping drums in slow rhythm. Even the sea answered, gentle waves lapping as if applauding. Midwinter feast convened on Dragonstone, banners of every realm shading the hall with dull rainbows under torchlight. Tyrion returned from Korth, scroll case bursting with sealed agreements. Piet priest threat defanged by a clause offering the warlocks exclusive rights to chronicle mereworm songs, so long as they remained on distant listening towers where they could harm no one. Korth accepted, seduced by vanity of authorship. Jon presented Bran's prophecy stone to the gathered lords. The crystal glowed faint as a summer dawn. Daenerys held it high between thumb and forefinger. This, she said, voice ringing off stone arches, is neither weapon nor idol, but a reminder. We stand in covenant with the world, not dominion over it. Cheers rose, some uncertain but growing. Even the Ironborn roared approval. Seeing in Leviathan peace a future of trade without scorn. When horns announced final toast, Davos Seaworth stepped forward, wooden stag in hand. Lines around his eyes had deepened, but his smile was boyish. A ship once saved storms end with onions, he said. Lately I've learned any cargo, even sorrow, can save us if we steer wisely. Tonight we sail into a sea of wonders in good company. 7 watch us. Old gods too, and perhaps new ones waking beneath. Let our sails hold. Though He raised a bowl of arbor ale. The hall echoed his words. Later, by quiet hearth, Sansa found Daenerys gazing at the stone. "What will you do with it?" Sansa asked. Daenerys turned the crystal between fingers. "Keep it close until the first mereworm surfaces, then return it to the sea. Promises shouldn't gather dust on land." Sansa nodded approval. "And after that?" "After that," Daenerys said, "I may rest." Sansa laughed softly. "Rest is a village with no roads. Hard to reach." "Then we build a road," the queen murmured. She closed her hand over the stone. "Together." Outside the narrow window, snow fell in gentle spirals, hushing the fortress, laying white over black basalt. Dragons nested wingtip to wingtip on the cliffs, their breath pluming in rhythm with far below surf. And faintly, beneath the hush, the world sang, sea beats thudding like heart drums, horns threnody weaving with it, wind carrying chords westward through every pass and valley, telling anyone who cared to listen that somewhere in that vastness a covenant, once broken, had been set anew. Not in blood, but in breath and song and the stubborn luminous hope